OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Welcome to OTB AM. Lads, how we doing?
Well,
I was just making the point there, if you start looking for them at 7, we don't need to be talking about what they are, but if you start looking for them at 7:31, it's a bit late, there's one over there.
Looking for mugs, that's just plenty of mugs in here. Hey!
There was also an absolutely brutal dad joke just before that.
There was a bad dad joke.
Seriously.
I think Shayne's delivery was
a long hard
good.
look at yourselves.
How
are you getting on?
Very well, Linus. Yeah.
We've loads to get to and loads coming up in the show. We were having a bit of a debrief before we come on. A little earlier, Shayne was talking to Colm here and he was talking about his excitement. All week, in any conversation that he's dropped into, I have such respect and admiration for this guy. Can I just get that out of the way straight off the bat?
Go ahead.
Can I just put that on record, Shayne?
You can sense it every Friday, do you know?
But I can only be that open and honest and frank with him because I have such respect for him.
I'd
like that to be on the record because I've had recent feedback to suggest that there might be a bit of tension between us, and that's...
Oh, you're my favourite person.
Yeah.
This feedback from the listeners or from...
In the studio at the minute?
No. Another one of my favourites. But next to me to my left.
Everyone's a favourite.
No, I have great time for you.
Anyway, I just want to get that out of the way.
I have great time for you.
So that's on the record
really
now,
do.
just in case it crops up.
Like a very public.
So we were having a bit of a debrief before we came on air about what we would talk about. There's been loads of really interesting stuff to get into. Colm all week has been trying to shoehorn conversations about the Wimbledon into the show, hasn't he? Like, I mean, I was in on, what day was I in? Tuesday? Wednesday?
You were in on Wednesday.
And it was up for discussion then. I'm only going to assume that it was up for discussion also Monday, Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah.
And it certainly came up again this morning. And then his excitement that, a former... superstar of the game is returning, not at Wimbledon, mind you, Shayne. She won't be back until later in the year, but let's shoehorn it into the conversation anyway, in the shape of Caroline Wozniacki. And it came to a conversation about Rory McIlroy and all this sort of stuff. I don't quite know how it sort of morphed into this, but
she was engaged to him.
We ended up having a conversation about fame. And how you just I don't think I will be able to cope with it was about Rory McIlroy specifically, in a story that Colm had that we can't really go into on air, but I don't think I'd cope especially well. Not that there's any fear of it.
Presumably you have to cope with some element of it, with the crappy quiz and with your off the ball antics.
I'm talking about like superstar fame, like a really well-known Gaelic footballer, soccer player, rugby player,
Justin Bieber,
music star, whatever, like even in an Irish sense of like, I remember when Kevin Caban used to work here and the odd time you'd go and like meet him for a pint, it was just a total waste of time. Like, he seemed so at ease and good with the whole thing and nice with people. I could just never be able to be as
nice.
Well, I couldn't. With that level of, like, if people coming over to you, you'd go out for a beer with him and you wouldn't have one conversation with him all night long, like. But he was very patient with it. So that's him over on this side. I don't think I'd be anywhere near. I think with that level of attention all the time, as I said, it's not before the YouTube commentators kick in. There's no fear of it. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm just saying that I don't think I'd enjoy that.
Similar for you when you go down to Cork, maybe everyone's. Yeah, you get very random acknowledgements. And for yourself too, as well. Random, definitely.
How good would you be with like much less random and much more frequent interactions?
I know. Well, you're basing it so when it happens, you're like, oh, jeez, just surprised all the time. But it's usually grand because it's not really about you. They just want to talk about the show. Yeah. So I suppose if it's really personal to you, so if you're in a sport where it's just yourself out there, like, there's no escape then. So people are constantly coming up to you.
Questions, autographs.
And probably opinions, very strong ones, about your performance. Yeah. Well, it's like David Clifford was getting escorted off the pitch by Gardaí the other day after it was at the Kerry-Louth match. Or the game wasn't over and he was just coming off the pitch just to get in ahead of the inevitable crowd of kids.
Cope with it on the pitch. It's I'm down at the shop buying the bits of groceries, or I'm out.
I'd say you'd be alright at it.
I don't think I would.
I think you'd be alright.
I think I'd be heavily affected by it. I wouldn't.
Oh yeah, I think deep down you'd be miserable, but I think outside you'd put on a brave face. What about and you'd be very nice.
If you were like a lead singer in a band or something like that?
Yeah, if I was a lead singer in a band,
I think he's musical.
I'd
looks a bit musical.
I like music, but I'm not musical. I'd love to be musical, but I like music. I think if I was a lead singer in a band, I'd live a certain lifestyle that I would be able to deal with it, alright, because you probably have a lot of escapism,
rock and roll,
as it is, you know. So you'd be like, it'd be probably fine. I suppose it depends on if you're not caught in any controversy. I think it'll be fine. I think the day that you be caught in a controversy, now that's a different story. What sort of
controversy would you be caught up in?
Don't know, if it was your pay wasn't correctly published.
What made you think of that this week?
And then you're like, well, I can't even go to the shops. Now that becomes problematic.
I don't think if you're a rock star,
I think if you work in the entertainment industry and then you go out and about, usually people are just going to congratulate you and say fair play.
I mean, like if you're Alex, philosophy of like,
can Alex Turner go to Lidl?
Probably not. Like,
don't think famous for doing something. Like if you walked on the moon, you're like, cheers, I walked on the moon. That's pretty.
But I don't think cool. You'd have. I think like if you were an inter-county superstar like David Clifford, I think you'd be getting more attention.
Yeah, tough, especially within your own county.
Anyway,
it wouldn't be easy.
Yeah, I mean, like loads of examples. Like Roy Keane walking around Cork is a disaster for him, but then Brian O'Driscoll in Dublin would probably slightly easier. Because not everyone's going to recognise him.
I would say you have to tailor your movements. Like, I need to go to the shops, I'm going to time that run so there's the least amount of people. Like, everywhere you go. So if I have to go to a meeting at 10 o'clock, I probably want to be aiming to get there about 9:15.
Yeah. Sure, you would have seen it. I remember we were in a thigh for the Try a Thigh. I remember we were walking down the main street with Brian O'Driscoll afterwards, I think.
Yeah.
And like, you're having a conversation with him, but like every 2 steps there's someone shouting his name or saying well or looking for a selfie but he just bats it off so easily and calmly. It's like, Jesus, this man is so used to this. But it's constant.
I'm trying to think of the highest one sporting capacity it's probably Tiger Woods or Cristiano Ronaldo. Just forget about it, like. To the point where you
That's
probably
awful, like.
to the point where you probably don't have any meaningful relationships at all with people. Like it'd be hard to have buddies. Like
a lot of kids now just aspire for fame. They don't really care what it would be, but they just have an aspiration for fame. I couldn't think of anything worse.
No.
Yeah, but I suppose in their head it's like everyone loving them all the time. And just getting constant praise. But I mean, that like humans can't really deal with that. Like you're not made to deal with constant praise, and you need a bit of back and forth to people. Like there was a documentary about Beckham about 10 years ago when he retired, and his one buddy seemed to be a guy that he met in Madrid or maybe in New York or something. He was kind of a relatively new friend, like. And then I think they asked him about his childhood friends, and he was like, he's long since last touch with them all. But like the trade-off is an incredible life and a legacy and all that, but then it's so difficult to be in a WhatsApp group with your buddies, like out of fear of what might happen, what you say, like someone could turn against you and then tell the story, and then that's the end of it. If you're at that level.
I remember when I was at the Crucible the last time, I remember I was at the stage door and Ronnie O'Sullivan was coming out, and Ronnie has just one mate who follows him everywhere, Robbie, lovely lad, who like literally just carries his cue, gets him away from people, all the rest. But there is such a massive crowd that waits for Ronnie at the stage door of the Crucible every time he's walking out. But these lads come in and out for practice all day, so like for 3 weeks, probably 4 or 5 times a day, Ronnie's coming out of that door. People are like, why didn't he stop and sign autographs and things like that? He's like, he couldn't do it every time, otherwise he'd be.
Owen Hurley here is saying, I'd love to be just about famous enough to earn a living in the sci-fi convention scene. I always thought like being I think that's being the drummer in Arctic Monkeys or something would be a great.
U2 even.
Great, you know what I mean?
Larry Mullen goes about his business. Nobody too much is going, hey
Larry could go to see the screen there, I'd say.
Even Adam
I'd say one I'd say one in every 10 people would recognise.
Yeah.
But you probably would, they wouldn't even chat, they'd just be, look who it is. That's good because you get the money, you get the lifestyle, but you can go about your business.
Perfect.
Blind Boy has it nailed, isn't he? That's
well, not really, because there's a good few pictures of him online now.
So somebody who's been looking.
If you type in Blind Boy.
What are we saying here? Diego says greetings from Texas, and then good morning to you, Diego. How are you getting on? I mean, I presume that it's I don't know.
8 hours, would it?
Is it middle of the night?
What is it, Diego? 5 or 8?
Greg Caffrey says greetings from Aidan. One up, yeah. I'm possibly. Aden, that sounds like the name of a place. ADEN.
Is that in Jordan? Am I wrong?
Not a clue.
Yemen. Yeah.
So yeah, if you're wherever it is you're at this morning, we'd love to hear from you. And welcome along to the show. We have loads coming up. What else do we want to talk about? Gavin Cumsky is reporting that Stephen Kenny needs to... let's go with that. Alan Quinlan's coming up at 10 to 8. He's going to talk about the Johnny Sexton news about the disciplinary hearing. He's going to talk about the Under-20 World Cup and the Cup of Champions, what's it called? The Clash of the Champions, Munster against Crusaders. We'll have Coney and Shayne Sullivan, Tyrone versus Kerry ahead of tomorrow's big game. That's coming up at 8:10. Paddy Christie will preview Dublin-Mayo. After that, we've the Labour Party leader Ivana Bacik in studio just before 9 o'clock this morning to talk about some proposals in relation to the growth of facilities and various other areas as well. We'll get to that just before 9. And then Shayne Murphy is a strength and conditioning coach with Scotland and with Manchester City. And if you're playing any amateur sport at all, you'll want to stay tuned for that, because he's going to give you a few shortcuts. Is that what he's going to do?
He'll do he'll do one of two things. Well, no, two things. He'll tell you what it's like to coach the supreme athletes, the elite ones of the world, like Jack Grealish and all that. And then he'll also tell you how to become a better athlete yourself down the road, like whether it's astro, tennis, golf, whatever you're having yourself, how to be fitter. Twofold.
We never got around to that paddle.
Do you know who did get around to that paddle?
I haven't forgotten about it, huh?
Do you know who did get around to the paddle? Jenny Claffey.
In a big way.
She's big into the paddle now.
Well, we talked about that the last time she was in. You were off at that time.
She's coming in
and
next
I did
week.
say that I had asked you to come and play paddle, and she was like, rubber armed her into saying that she'd come and give us a few hints and tips and stuff.
Would you be good at it?
I don't know, I've never played.
I'd love to play.
She doesn't even play tennis, like.
I haven't played tennis in a year. 1 year. To this day.
Well, I didn't think you played tennis at all.
Oh, I did, yeah. Played a good bit of it now for the last year's Harbour Park.
Oh, yeah, nice.
It was kind of weird the way you said to this day. You remember the last
day a year ago.
30th of June?
Yeah. 30th of June, big day.
Stephen Kenny has to get 2 points, according to Gavin Cumsky in the Irish Times this morning, to secure his future. 2 points from the France and Holland games later in the year.
4 points for Philip Quinn yesterday, I think, in the papers.
4 points feels like not an article you need to print. Like, that seems like just a very obvious point. If they could get 4 points from those two games, that would be crazy level of success. Would nearly put right the stuff that's gone wrong so far. 2 points feels like, I know we did run France obviously incredibly close. You kind of feel as if that game is a write-off. I feel will be my feeling. Could we beat the Dutch here will be the thing. So by all accounts, that's the way to look at that is, if we can beat Holland here, Stephen Kenny stays on.
Do you think if they beat the Dutch 1-0, backs against the wall job, last minute header from a corner, and get annihilated by France 5-0, do you think he'll keep his job?
The order is which? France first and then Holland?
I think he keeps the job if that happens, because he's got 3 points. Like,
if that's the order, if the Dutch game is second,
you don't want the
something in
annihilation
my mind that says it is, then I think that's what people leave with. In the same way as the last window, if the Greece game had to come first.
France is first.
Which is first?
France is first.
So you leave the window on a bit of a high, as we did with the last round of games. I know it was Gibraltar, but at the same time, if the Greece result had been second, it leaves a lingering taste.
You can't realistically expect anything from the France game. The Dutch, another story. But I think people are kind of slightly underrating the Dutch as well. Like, they had a decent World Cup. They went all the way against Argentina, who won it.
They're a rabble bill.
They're not, compared to their former selves, they are.
Yeah.
But overall, they're far better than us.
1 point to be very lucky given what we've seen, says Greg. Hello from Brisbane, says Damien Hanley. Nearly 5 p.m. Perfect time for listening in each day.
Jeez, yeah, you forget that people are...
Good afternoon to you, Damien.
That's ideal. Yeah.
See, P-Well74, how does Gilroy do it, lads? I don't think he'd stop for an autograph.
Yeah. How would we all compare? Gerard would stop, wouldn't he?
Gerard would revel in it and be very good at it.
He'd do the scribbly signature.
He would absolutely not revel in it. Oh my God, no!
I
He would hate that.
I don't think he'd revel in it.
He'd do it, but he'd hate it. I don't know how dumb Lloyd does it.
Friday is all about location, says Terry Kelly. How he is from Antwerp. Well, we're getting it right. Oh, spread this morning.
When you hear Antwerp, you think Royal.
Antwerp. Yeah.
John O'Shea. Yeah. See, we're all in the same brain.
Conor Joyce says, Dan Delaney says, a high after beating Gibraltar. Seriously, Adrian, I accept your point. I'm just saying it was a higher point than losing to Greece.
Kenny fandom and OTB continues regardless. We're just literally saying what's going to happen then.
Yeah.
Andre Butler the third.
Kenny FM.
People are just saying locations.
Andre Butler the third now. He's in Toronto.
Sounds like an NFL player.
He's the best of them.
And Connor Joy says, you don't need to worry, lads, they won't get any points from the 2 games. Like, that is a distinct possibility, and I think that if that were to play out that way, not an entirely unlikely set of events.
I love the optimism, Connor. Fair play to you.
We have 2 listeners from Toronto, with Brian Wise as well as another regular fan of the show. So there you go.
Keep the locations coming in. You don't need to say anything. You can add in a little bit if you like.
We should do that on Fridays. Yeah, we should be like, how far can we go?
Hello from Tokyo. You're making it up now, Robert. Robert, you don't live in Japan.
He's sending that from Knocknaheeny.
Yeah. Come on now, Robert. We've ordered a drink.
Tokyo's Townland and Roscommon.
Photo or it didn't happen, is that what they say?
Yeah. Tell us
I don't think you can do that on the YouTube comments, mind you.
Tweet us a photo of Japan.
Michael says, morning from D4. I've been known to enjoy a game of tennis in Herbert Park myself. Do you have to be a member there to play?
No, it's class. You just rock up €6 per person. It's brilliant. And the courts are outstanding. Good, Great coffee shop next to it. Great day out.
Great playground there as well, like a voucher.
How many hours? Is it like snooker where you might spend 3 or 4 hours playing it?
No, you book it for 1 hour.
Book it for an hour. Right.
You'd be done after an hour.
Unlike snooker in the sense that you'd work up a bit of a sweat. It's an actual sport.
Snooker's a sport, lads. Let me tell you.
I'm not.
Sport of kings.
Let's not go there. What are we talking about? 2 points from the window. Yeah. It's really, we're talking about 3 points from the Dutch game. So we're talking.
I think so. I suppose that's my question. Yeah. I like an annihilation by France. It's not acceptable, but it's understandable, right? I mean, like. So
but not after the first game
think about the France game, right? So if they play a strong 11 and they beat us well, what complaints can we actually have?
France.
Against France?
No.
It's the only yeah. So you don't even think about the France game. This is all about the Dutch game.
Yeah.
Isn't it? But I think the problem is when people when France hammer us, people be like, oh, this is typical.
I don't think they'll hammer us. I think we've already proven, and we do tend to the one, like, I don't want to be
he doesn't get hammered.
Positive Peter here, but like, you know, we do tend to up our games against the better teams. I think we've a right chance against the Dutch.
You're telling me there's a chance?
I am.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
Like we can do that. We can up our game. If we need everybody fit, I think that goes without saying. We'll see obviously where players are at in terms of clubs and all, a lot of that stuff playing out at the minute. Don't give us much of a shake in Paris, but I think that we could beat the Dutch.
Yeah, possibly.
Love it.
We don't have to think about this till September, and we have a World Cup in between. So
now I'm slightly concerned about asking this next question, but I'll ask you anyway, from Dan here on YouTube, wondering if you're going to Croker on Sunday. Colm, I won't even bother asking Shane. He's Monaghan to the core.
I would, Dan, if I could source a ticket for the Derry game, I would absolutely go on Sunday.
What do you mean source a ticket?
Get a ticket.
I know, but are they not like, I'd like to be sold out, will it?
Oh, I think because it's the Dublin-Mayo's after that.
Yeah. Will it be sold out?
I think it will, yeah.
I think you'll get one. I think, Adrian, if you really want one, you'll get one.
I think you're right.
I do really want one.
We can sort one, yeah.
Can we?
Sort one, I'd say.
Can we sort one?
Well,
can you sort one? There? You could probably sort one, could you?
What do you mean sort one? Go on to Ticketmaster and buy one, like.
No. You have, I'd say, connections.
No, you don't want, like, the lesson of the last week told you anything.
I think you have
something. Don't pay for your own stuff. Don't be expecting handouts.
It was a fair point, actually, though, that
the lesson of the last week,
or a bit more, yeah. That, like, let there be no sort of under the table dodgy sort of carry on. Tickets are available. Go and buy a ticket.
Again, lads, I feel like you're hinting at something.
I don't need to publish anything about my ticket purchasing or otherwise.
I know you don't, but I'm just saying, like, it's a good indicator as to your general behaviour.
Johnny brought that up during the week.
I would never do anything.
You two are bickering
for free.
Yeah, I'll take anything for free.
But like, what are you asking me to sort a ticket for you?
Because I think you have tickets.
I've no tickets.
I think you do. Yeah, I've seen your inbox.
I mean, number one, you haven't,
Insidious.
And number two, I don't have tickets.
I think you do.
I'm okay.
Just like one of those arguments are just never going to end.
It's not an argument, like.
No.
We're not fighting.
We're not fighting. No, Johnny Ward made that point during the week, and I think it was rightful to make it with John Cleary, the Cork football boss, that the Cork fans don't travel well at all. Like, they had 14,000 in Páirc Uí Chaoimh for the Roscommon game, well, between Cork and Roscommon fans. But he made the point that a lot of the Cork football fans and support is in West Cork.
Yeah.
So even getting to Cork City is tough, and never mind getting up to Dublin. But I do think a lot of the Cork people living in Dublin should
they should rally the troops, Shane.
Because Derry will be there in numbers, and they have equally as far.
And Cork are wearing white, so it feels very much
like,
they? Yeah, every day. Really.
How'd you know that?
Because I read it.
So Derry going red?
Yeah.
We're doing a roadshow in Cork.
We are, yeah.
In a little while, and there's a major announcement about a guest coming.
Is it
major?
See, I told you,
major.
Stuff. I know
Cork Opera House.
You always know more than you lead on.
There's a major incoming guest announcement.
Is that all you're able to say?
That's all I'm able to say.
True.
Honestly, like if you're from Cork and you're in any way self-respecting Cork person,
sporting guest,
you will want to get yourself to this show. I can't say any more.
Any hints?
The problem with statements like that is like, we have this massive announcement, but I can't say anything.
Munster, two of the biggest, two of the biggest names,
two huge guests, and I can't say anything. Like this, that's
tickets available now, and I'm not even.
That's a scam.
I'm not even scamming.
You're saying that you're after saying Munster, which immediately leads me to think two names in particular.
Well, I couldn't be in a position to confirm or deny whatever gets thrown out there.
Here, come here. I suggested some names, and
Roy Keane,
I was heard.
Ronan O'Gara,
I heard that there's no money for that. Like,
I mean, we might leave the production call for a slightly separate forum, but I'm just telling you, there's two
huge Cork guests, and then everybody thinks those two people are going to be.
One thing I will say,
and it's not going to be them.
It's not Roy Keane. It's not Roy Keane.
And is it a regular on the show?
I can't say any more after that.
I said Roy Keane and Ronan O'Gara, and he said it's not Roy Keane. I mean, I'm reading between certain lines here.
Yeah, I don't want to start giving.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
But I'm just saying that, keep it. Watch this space.
Interesting.
Anyway, what are we talking about?
We've loads there. Look.
What else do you want to talk about? We've the shirt numbers for the Republic of Ireland team for the World Cup, and I was sort of looking at them going, so like I would just wonder how they come up with do the management team sit down and pick their 11 and then go, okay, because that would on one level seem as if it would be the most logical thing to do, or do they go goalkeepers 1, 12, whatever you're having yourself, defenders you'll be 2 to 7, midfielders you'll be bum. Is that the way they do it, or like because there must be a temptation to sit down and pick your
it is strange
starting 11, which is not 1 to 11 is not how it'll appear.
Claire O'Riordan's number 2, and it's unlikely she'll start.
Little John, we won in the 50-50. She's 8.
Who's name? Say Ireland's Euro 2016 campaign, right?
Yeah.
Who are the 2 or 3 players that immediately come to your head when you think of that tournament?
Robbie Brady, Jeff Hendrick, Wes Houlihan. Yeah,
so you've got 2 of them there, bang on. So Robbie Brady and Wes Houlihan came to mind for me. Robbie Brady was wearing 19 for that tournament, and Wes Houlihan was wearing 20.
And was Hendrick 13?
He possibly was.
He might have.
That was his thing.
So it shows you how relevant the numbers are.
Brady was a guaranteed starter at that stage.
Yeah, and he was still wearing 19. Hendrick was wearing 13. You're right. So none of those 3 players that you named were 1 to 11. So it doesn't matter. I'd be with you there. What's the logic then of the numbers? Well, some players might have lucky numbers that are outside the 11, which is fair.
Anyway,
good night, says Alan Healy. Good night from Napa, California.
Oh, that sounds lovely. It's wine region, isn't it?
Yeah, Napa Valley. Nice. Yeah. Owen Hurley says we travelled to Killarney in numbers. I'm assuming that's
Cork fans. That's not too far to go. My point is, like, you have to go beyond that. Like, Derry fans will travel in numbers down to Dublin. Do you know? What are you giggling at there, Boot?
The comments.
Go on, what have you got? Only tickets in the Nally stand. Tom in Dublin. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with the. It's not called the Nally anymore anyway. It's called.
Cork should wear the yellow jerseys.
Did you ever go to the Nally, get country bumpkins? That would have been a.
The Nally? No, I don't think I was ever in the Nally.
You're even looking at me going, "What's the Nally?" Are you?
No, it's beside the hill.
Jesus, next to the hill.
Next to the hill. It's still in use, but is it still called the Nally? I presume it is. Nally Terrace, yeah.
No, it's not called the Nally.
Is it not? No,
I don't think so. I mean, I could be wrong. I thought that was gone.
Just before we move on, Adrian, do you mind me asking your co-host a question? What do you think of Mason Mount to Manchester United?
I'm probably unsure about it in a similar sense that I was about Declan Rice to Arsenal. To be honest, for the price tag, I'd prefer Mason Mount for 60 million than Rice for 105.
Oh man, back to this.
I really would. I know it's easy to compare them, or hard to compare them in some ways, but because they're both English, and maybe that's why I'm doing it. But Mount has a lot of promise. United clearly wanted him. He was Eric Ten Hag's number 1 target.
He's another middle of the road head.
I would take Rice over Mount every day of the week, even if it's double the price.
But for the price,
no,
sure. What does the money make?
Prices are relevant. Take Rice.
It's not even a conversation. Like,
I was actually thinking about
it's not irrelevant though.
I was actually thinking about our debate
for United edition. They don't care. All those clubs
about your opinion of Rice. And I would rate your opinion as a baller yourself. Yeah. Like, I was thinking, why does Shane think this?
I had a couple of messages from people yesterday who agreed with me.
No, I'd say a lot of people do, but I really think he's like the best midfielder in his position on his day in the Premier League, Declan Rice. I think he's a fabulous player.
A bit like when Jack Grealish went to Manchester City, right? We knew a little bit, and there was enough for Manchester City to go, here, we need to get this lad in. Like, it took him, 12, 18 months to actually get his feet properly on the table. There is a bit of that about Declan Rice when he goes to a bigger club.
Well, the one thing I was saying yesterday was that I actually want more from him, to see more from him. And now he is, I think it was Ger put it yesterday, he's no more excuses now because he plays for a challenger, a contender. Yeah. And I can't wait to see that, but I think he's a fabulous player.
I think you think my opinion of Rice is tarnished because he's English, because he's now English, and because of everything that happened before. But I genuinely, like, I saw a video of Declan Rice recently after a West Ham game where he's giving the jersey to a little kid and having a lovely conversation with him. So I have nothing against Declan Rice as a human being. I just think he's vastly overrated, partly because he's an English footballer.
No, you can't say he's overrated because of his nationality.
He's not worth 105
million. Well, his price tag is reflective of him being an England international. That is a fact.
Yeah, but who cares, like, about the price tag?
I agree with you.
But why do you think he's overrated?
That's not a good point.
Why do you think he's overrated as a footballer?
Well, so
great question.
Point out the games that he, like, yes, for West Ham he stood out. He definitely stood out in that West Ham team, I agree with you. And when he plays for England, he has good middle of the road games quite regularly. But, like, do you ever just watch Declan Rice and go, oh my God, he is amazing? I don't. I certainly don't. I think he is overrated to a T. Like, he's so vastly overrated.
I don't think you say that about the vast majority of midfielders. You don't say, oh my God. You would never say it about Michael Carrick. You'd rarely say it about Xavi himself. You'd say Xavi is part of the Iniesta and Busquets bracket, but not Xavi. Oh my God, what Xavi did with the ball, there's sensational highlights. Look, everything's just so simple.
And that's kind of right. Shane's anti-English.
Certainly not anti-English. I'm anti-Declan Rice hype train. He's very good at intercepting the ball. He's very good at reading the game. Like, I just think other elements of his game need so much more.
We'll find out when he goes to a proper club. That's it.
He just captain West Ham to a European trophy. They're hardly not a proper club. We'll find out with a club
you use the term European trophy
where the spotlight will be on him constantly. But, like,
to gloss over the fact that
you were saying some attributes he has, that he intercepts very well and he passes well, but not too dissimilar to Roy Keane on the ball. Roy Keane never did anything spectacular on the ball.
I think it's sacrilege to name them in the same sentence even.
I don't think it is at all.
Oh, it is.
I'm not talking about mentality. Like, there'll never be another Roy Keane. But like, people think that Roy Keane was this guy who would, like, absolutely dominate games completely, and sometimes he would by sheer personality and will. But as a footballer, he did everything very simply. He'd say it himself. He got the ball and he passed the ball. He got the ball and he passed the ball.
You have bought his own hype. That's not true.
That's what he.
If you watch his games, he's a technically brilliant player.
Exactly, and so is Declan Rice. But what they do is very simple. You're never going to be wowed by them.
He's not as.
What they do is very true about Roy Keane.
You'd be wowed by Roy Keane's will and running up and down,
his quality
and the way he go about it. But you would so rarely say about Roy Keane, wow, with a pass. But everything he did was so good.
You mentioned Michael Carrick. Michael Carrick. Rice wouldn't lace Carrick's boots, in my opinion, at this stage. Maybe at Arsenal he got 2 or 3 good years, helps them win a title or whatever.
Well, it's only because Carrick's had a whole career behind him,
and that's an overstatement.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course.
He could end up being having a far better player than Michael Carrick. He could.
But what I've seen so far,
but what I'm saying is he's done now, so he's like, I've had me bit now, you can, but we just don't know. That's the reality of it. We won't know until he goes to. I don't mean to use the term proper club. That is disparaging and needless. But a bigger club,
of course. Well, yeah, time will tell.
Arsenal are a bigger club.
Yeah,
let's go back
to this in 6-12 months time and see how we're all getting on.
Yeah, right, we'll definitely remember to
set a reminder on your phone there. And for Mason Mount as well, the jury is out on him, I have to say, but I prefer Mount to Rice.
Roy Keane a million times better than Rice. Come on, Colin.
Obviously, that's obvious. Go on there, go on.
He's done now. He's like, he drags on the conversation for another 10 minutes beyond where we were supposed to finish, and now he's done and he wants to get out the gap. Colin, can I just say thanks a million for coming in? I really enjoyed your contribution. I thought if you were going to tap me in the hand there, that was an unusual.
I wish you did.
But anyway, listen, no, thanks. I always enjoy his contributions.
I love having you on a Friday.
He's so good, and generally as a colleague, lovely man, lovely person.
Gets me out of bed on a Friday.
Having you here.
Does he?
Yeah.
I wish you were here more. Can you do that?
I am. I'm here basically twice a week
for
now.
A few weeks. Yeah. Go on, he's waiting.
So very enjoyable. Loads still to come. We're going to a huge GAA section in the middle of the show. So if that's your bag, stay tuned for that in a little bit. And do keep the comments coming into us as well. Whatever location you're at this morning seems to be tickling people's fancy. So do get that into us now. It is time to turn to the rugby. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
How are you keeping?
Good, thanks. Yeah, very good.
We were having a conversation earlier on about how people deal with recognition and fame and autograph hunters and selfie hunters. You must get a fair bit of that.
No, I do not. Not in the same bracket as the people you were talking about. No, I'm probably an autograph hunter nowadays.
I get out of it. How do you deal with that when you're out and about shops, out for a pint, and there's people coming at you left, right, and centre? Are you good with it?
It doesn't happen to me that much, to be honest. It probably did happen a bit when you're playing, particularly when I was living down in Limerick and stuff like that. If you go out for the food shop in the evening, particularly around Castletroy, there's a lot of us living around there and training close to the university. Yeah, you'd meet lots of people who'd stop up, but they get used to you and probably leave you alone then. But it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen much anymore. Most people haven't a clue who I am anyway, so it's not an issue. But yeah, I'm more of an autograph hunter nowadays, particularly with my son and stuff. If we're out and about and we see anyone,
you can't.
Yeah.
So a few things to get to. We'll talk a little bit maybe about the Clash of the Champions. Has been worded in a little bit. We want to talk obviously about the under-20s as well, but might start with the Johnny Sexton independent disciplinary hearing that's been confirmed for July the 13th. Obviously it's looking into his conduct after the Champions Cup final last month. This is a worry now, isn't it?
It is, and it's probably taken a while, which has been surprising that it's taken this long to actually determine that they're going to have a hearing. A couple of weeks ago, obviously we heard that something was happening. They made contact and probably looked for a response from Johnny Sexton and from Leinster, and now we have a hearing. So it is a concern, it is a worry, and I suppose it's in a court, in a court of law, it's probably there's some sort of a case to answer for that they've progressed to this stage, and who knows what's going to happen. As I said a while back, hopefully from an Irish point of view, it's not a ban that's going to affect the World Cup. I think they have to address the issue. I think if you ask Johnny afterwards, and again, I'm not speaking for him, he probably would regret what happened and getting involved, particularly, I think, more so that he wasn't in the match day 23. He's a captain of the squad and he's a very senior player with Leinster, but it probably wasn't a great look when you're not involved and not tugged out. As I said, people can say stuff to referees, and there's emotion and there's probably a bit of mitigation if you're tugged out and you have that adrenaline rush and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't a great look. He didn't murder anyone. It's not like as if it's a disgraceful kind of situation. But I think it's something that he probably he shouldn't have done. That's the reality of it. He shouldn't have done it, and he engaged with Jaco Piper. He's obviously he said his piece. So look, I think they'll have to be seen to take some sort of action, and I'm sure Johnny will have an explanation of what he said as well. But it's a worry now at this stage, and it's something that hopefully, as I said, doesn't affect his World Cup preparation. I'm sure there may be some sort of a ban or suspension or fine or something out of this.
Do you they obviously have some heavy hitters now on the panel. The fact that they're taking it this far suggests that they feel that there is a case to be answered. Is there some sense, Quinny, that it's his reputation has preceded him to a degree with this as well, or that may even end up playing itself into the conversation a little bit?
Yeah, well, there's a. I'm not sure. I think that could be a case in point for Leinster and his defence to say that there's obviously been a lot of talk about this on social media and a lot of commentary from people who maybe see this as an opportunity to weaken Ireland at the World Cup.
Yeah.
Some journalists have seen it, and I'm not sure. They're talk about the good of the game and the values of the game and the way you don't see people getting involved with referees, and rugby is different to soccer, the way you see soccer players kind of up in their faces screaming and shouting. Look what happened to Jurgen Klopp a few months ago in the Premier League when he's kind of going at a fourth official. That was very high profile. He got a touchline ban for that and a fine. I know it's a different level, but it's not a good look for sport when you have that. And we're continuously trying to talk about respect for referees and GAA referees in particular in Ireland. A lot of situations they've had. Problems with the DDSL here in Dublin that's been highlighted the last number of years, where referees don't want to go out on a Sunday and referee underage games because they're getting abused on the sideline. So nobody wants to see that situation where referees are being kind of challenged. There's always a case for me of believing that there's a balance, and it goes right back to the Rassie Erasmus stuff at the Lions a couple of years ago, that there has to be some little bit of accountability. Emotions get high, and the performance on a particular day can affect people's livelihoods on both ways, referee and players. So sometimes emotions get high, but I don't think there's been a trial on social media of Johnny Sexton, and previously he's the type of person, I've said this before, that I want him as my captain, confronting the referees or challenging decisions, but sometimes Johnny's emotions get the better of him, and he's so passionate about what he does. And in this particular case, I think it wasn't a good look, and I would imagine, as again I'm only speculating, that he realised that it was wrong. And we all want to say things at times to referees or give out to them after matches, whether you're coaches, players or participants, but sometimes you just got to bite your lip. And in this particular occasion, I think, because and I didn't think there was anything major in that game that totally went against Leinster either, and I say that as in my own opinion. There was nothing that jumped out that there was any blatant decision that Jakob Hyper had given against him. So look, I think he got it wrong, and I imagine if the ERC, ECPR, or there's going to be some sort of punishment here, and from an Irish point of view, look, hopefully it's not a situation of him missing any World Cup games. He may miss warm-up games. It may be a fine. But look, I don't think it's as bad as it's kind of been portrayed in some quarters. But he's going to have a problem here of some sort, I think. Yeah,
and we had Ronan O'Gara on a few weeks ago speaking in his defence as well. I'm sure that will be factored into it too. We'll see what happens on the track. So let's talk about, you were in commentary duty yesterday on Virgin for the pool game, Ireland against Australia, the Junior Wallabies. An impressive win from the end, Quinny, 4-try bonus point win. They've drawn with England before that. They have Fiji to come, and if my reckoning is correct, it means that if Ireland beat Fiji with a bonus point and England have anything less than bonus point win over Australia, then Ireland go through. And if both Ireland and England win with a bonus point, then it comes down to points difference. So Ireland may need to do a big number on Fiji.
No, from what I can look at it, Adrian, just in the permutations, I think there's 3 pools of 4. The top 3 in each pool goes through automatically, and then there's a 4th best runner-up, which would be the next best qualified team. So if you look at Pool C, I think you've Italy on 5, South Africa on 5, and Georgia on 5. Those 3 teams cannot get past 10 points. So one of them will top the group on 10 points, I think. And then the next best runner-up in the other 2 pools, will again, I think, in the top group, France's group, I think the top number there they can get to is 12 or 13 as well, maybe 12. So from what I can see, if Ireland get a bonus point win, they're going to be in the semi-finals.
Okay.
France are going to top the group. Either Ireland or England, it looks like, will possibly top the group, and then you're kind of going from Argentina, Georgia, South Africa, or maybe Italy, because they beat South Africa yesterday. It's amazing. That group is so tight. It started with Argentina beating Italy pretty convincingly, and yesterday was, crazy. Georgia beat Argentina, and Italy beat South Africa. So that group is incredible. So from my reckoning, a bonus point win puts Ireland in the semi-finals. England had a big win yesterday. They're 26 points better than Ireland. And obviously they've got to play Australia yet, so who knows what will happen in that game. But going back to the game yesterday, I think the first 10 or 15 minutes was concerning, and it looked like that Ireland were playing a side that were just incredibly dangerous in attack. Their backline looked very powerful. Australia looked a better team for the first 10 or 15 minutes of the game. Ireland were under a fair bit of pressure. And unbelievably, when it looked like Australia possibly are scoring a try early on, Andrew Osborne, he intercepts a try, goes up the field. Ireland get a penalty, they go 3-0 up. And then we saw the dangerous nature and quality of Australia, where they go nearly the full length of the field and score a brilliant try under the post, and you're kind of worried and concerned when it goes to 10-3 to Australia. And
some poor Ireland defence within that, Quinny, as well, like it must be said.
It was, but it was like their centre, and I said it a lot in commentary, David Vahu, he's played a lot of Super Rugby this year. He's an incredible player, and he's involved in that try. I think Henry O'Donnell, who scores it, has played Super Rugby. Teddy Wilson, their captain, the scrum half, Super Rugby as well. A lot of these guys have fairly regular contributions. I know there's some guys in the Irish side of URC involvement, but not as much as the Australians. So kind of before the game, you're thinking, oh God, this is a tall order. Now the conditions were horrendous, and how there's a situation where there's 3 matches on the same pitch in the one day, and it's not factored in that if the weather goes a bit pear-shaped.
What's the story with that, Quinny? Like the pitches on the TV look absolutely horrendous.
It's crazy. Will, did you see the third game, Italy and South Africa? It's hard to believe that it wasn't taken into consideration that you could have, and it does rain a bit in South Africa this time of year, it's their winter, so to have 3 games in the one pitch and talk about player welfare and protecting players and safety, thankfully I don't think anybody got seriously injured from a bad slip or a bad injury from the games yesterday, but I think in hindsight that was a mistake, not to have another option. I understand what they're trying to do, and in fairness, it's easy to talk about it afterwards. They're trying to get all the games on the one day, and the games are coming thick and fast. There's kind of 5 or 6 days between each block of games, but it wasn't a good look. But Ireland were outstanding. I think they get a try before half time, and they nudge ahead, and you think, wow, this is a big turnaround. I think a big turning point of the game was the tight head for Australia going off, Massimo De Lutis. I think a big, powerful, because Ireland's scrum kind of creaked a little bit early in the game, and then you have a situation in the second half where Ireland's scrum dominance was just unbelievable. It was hard to fathom how it turned around so much and was so dominant, and that's kind of what won them the game. The forward pack, they were just brilliant, I think, as a unit. I've said this a lot about this team and throughout the Six Nations as well. They're unbelievably tough, dogged. There's a hardiness about them that they just never really give up, and they're very abrasive and confrontational, so they don't take a backward step in anything they do. So and they loved that kind of scenario yesterday of rolling up the sleeves and really kind of being direct in the way they were playing, because that was the conditions. But when you win 30 points to 10 against a very fancied Australian side, it's a brilliant return, and they've put themselves right back in contention and really within a great position of getting into a semi-finals.
We should mention, Quinny, your fellow Tipperary man as well, Brian Gleeson. Like, I think we've used a few superlatives about him before on the show, chatting to you, and even some of his stats yesterday. 14 carries, 70 metres gained, 2 line breaks, 8 tackles, and got that try as well. Like, this guy is the real deal, isn't he?
It's not a surprise to see. I think what's great is he's backed up the performances in the Six Nations with even better performance yesterday. He's not just this big, strong, powerful ball carrier who runs direct at people. His footwork is very impressive. His handling, and he was so prominent yesterday. I think he was without the ball as well. His tackles, his turnovers. Unbelievably impressive. You know, he got a knock in the lead up to the English game, and I think his presence was missed because he's just non-stop for the whole game. Ruaidhri Quinn was the same. The ball carrying, and they're, you know, I know they're two Munster guys, and I don't want to get anyone kind of saying I'm Munster bias here, but watch the game. You know, watch both of them. Ruaidhri Quinn was just unbelievable as well. The carries and the power and the constantly getting over the game line. There's loads of other guys here. You know, Paddy McCarthy as a move from tight head to loose head was outstanding. Gus McCarthy, the captain, and Ronan Fox making his debut yesterday. First start for the Ireland under-20s. 1 or 2 early problems in the scrum, but you know, he had a great game, and in the loose as well. So Charlie Irvin and Conor O'Tierney as well, and the players that came off the bench. I think that'll really please Richie Murphy, the kind of energy and the enthusiasm that kind of grew, and I just think that they controlled the whole game in the second half. The conditions did not suit the Australians, and they didn't play the conditions in any way. Who knows, if you had a dry day, a hard pitch, would they caused Ireland more problems? Possibly. They should have scored a try after half time when it was 11-10. Tim Ryan, the Australian winger, dropped the ball, and that was their only opportunity of the whole second half. So it was a brilliant performance, particularly in that second half from this Ireland under-20 side.
Just before we wrap, Quinny, Dan Delaney has been in contact. He says Quinny gave us a talk back in 2013 before the county semi-final in the Laois Senior Hurling Championship. Plenty of young lads looking for selfies that night.
I can't remember. Did they win the match though? Does he say that?
He hasn't told us. He'll be
was the talk any good, or did I bore them to tears?
So anyway, look at we'll have to go back to the Clash of the Champions again, Quinny. The game on Tuesday, isn't it? Fiji, is that right?
Tuesday, the game against Fiji, yeah.
On the telly?
It is, yeah. So, it is, yeah. I think it's 12:30 kickoff on Virgin.
Very good. Yourself and Dave Mack playing a blinder, and hopefully we can get through Fiji and progress on. Quinny, thanks a million.
Cheers, thanks lads.
Thanks a lot. 17 minutes past 8. Greetings from Mauritius, says Ralph.
I'm
Conway.
getting such wanderlust from the comments coming in this morning. Someone says hello from the downstairs lavatory, so that's less exciting and exotic. But Dan
says
still,
we won, and they won the final as well. The Laois Senior Hurling.
Great. Yeah. So the motivational speech worked. Fair play.
There's loads of people coming in from all different. We had one here. Really nice comment here from Sean Davok says, midnight in Vancouver, driving to a rugby tournament.
That sounds nice.
At Williams Lake Stampede. Midnight in Vancouver, driving to a rugby tournament.
The rugby tournament must be tomorrow. They must be just getting the drive out of the way. That'll be my take. Lovely little calm comment, a little moment of zen. Yeah. Followed by nothing like the OTB what about it to keep us entertained. That's more like it. Yeah, I'm getting absolute dog's abuse here for different takes. Shayne is just anti any football club bar United. Sad mentality, can't be open and honest. That's just plainly not true. Same commenter says I'm digging a massive hole. Like, it's not true. And someone says Rice started Euro 2021. Another Parchi song take from Shane. That's not like I said Mount over Rice for the price tag. Yeah. What I enjoy about that is that even you are like, oh yeah, that Parchi song stuff was a bit mad. No. I stand by the Parchi song comparison. Stop. Lee Keegan Parchi song comparison. I'm not going to get into Tender that. Chicken says 9:30 in Madrid, 31 degrees. Go man, Tender. Jesus, right? Right.
Nearly 20 past 8, and you're watching OTBAM. We're delighted to have you with us. We've loads still to come. We're getting our teeth stuck into the GAA. Now we're going to have Ivana Bacik, the leader of the Labour Party, with us in just a little bit to talk about their plans for the beautiful game in Ireland, and plenty more as well. So do keep those comments coming in. We hosted a night of celebration, one of the best nights we've ever had out. I can say that safely from an OTB point of view, for the Republic of Ireland. It was all in partnership with Sky. It was on Wednesday night in the Mansion House in Dublin. It was Nathan and Aisling, and we were joined by all the Irish team, the manager Vera Powell, and a few Irish legends as well, before of course the team set sail for the World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. Here is a short clip. The full thing, by the way, go and check it out. It's brilliant watching and brilliant listen wherever it is you pick up your podcasts. But here's a clip from the night. Sky, who are proud primary partners of the Republic of Ireland women's national team. Here's a clip of Amber Barrett and her father Sean Paul talking about how the now of course iconic Scotland goal, and we're back after that with Sean Sullivan and Kyle Coney.
OTB AM,
The sports breakfast show from Off the Ball. It's Galway versus Kilkenny.
But not as you know it.
It's the fastest I've ever seen you run in your life, bro.
The Hurling Pod Live is off to the Bord Gáis Energy Theatre in Dublin this July, and you're invited.
I'll be joined by my co-host James Skell and Paul Murphy on the night.
Start the leveler, he'd say, and the tractor is coming after us.
As we debate the highs and lows of the 2023 season and preview the All-Ireland Hurling Final. Plus, we'll be announcing some more hurling legends to take the stage with us.
It was a ruck, I got confused.
It's happening on July 20th at the Bord Gáis Energy Theatre. It's an exclusive off-air event. Tickets are limited, so don't delay. Go to offtheball.com/events for more.
Bord Gáis Energy, proud sponsors of the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship.
This is what inter-county hurling is it? That's why I should have stayed at rugby.
How often do you watch it back?
So my New Year...
Oh, here we go.
My
Fit them all down the first night and go...
my New Year's resolution was to stop watching it. I think I got about 20 minutes into the 1st of January and I was watching it again. But like it's like what we said, it's like that moment. You know, I think everybody here, and obviously the girls at home, everybody wants to be the person that scored the goal that sent us to a World Cup. And, you know, I've said it so many times that, of course, the goal was unbelievable and the accomplishment that came with it. But I think on the back of everything from Donegal the days previous, it just made it 100 times more important and more personal. And, you know, I think not enough people have said it in terms of how this team are as a group, and you know, I can't say thank you enough to how the girls were for me personally over those days, how the staff were, you know, constantly checking in on the Donegal girls, because you know, I think a few of us did know people who had been, you know, unfortunately affected, but the girls were excellent, and you know, it epitomises everything this team is about. You know, it's not about ourselves, it's about everything else. And I just want to say again, in front of everybody, so you can prove it, that I said thanks to the girls for that.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
8:22, it's OTB AM and the sports breakfast show from Off the Ball. Myself and Shane with you until 10 this morning, and we're turning to GAA now. Kerry-Tyrone specifically, the quarterfinal tomorrow, Croke Park, 3:45. Delighted to say that we're joined on the line by Tyrone's Kyle Coney and former Kerry footballer Shayne Sullivan. Morning, lads.
Morning, guys.
I was sort of wondering, Sean, to begin with, just around the narrative around Kerry and the idea of a revenge for 2 years ago and a revenge for the noughties as well, and whether Kerry do revenge or not. And then I saw a quote from Jack O'Connor, who was just casually dropping into conversation. I saw somewhere today that we have beaten Tyrone in 3 of the last 4 championship meetings, and I thought revenge could be on the table here.
Yeah, it's not like Jack to throw the soundbite like that, is it? Yeah, revenge. Look, I'm not sure that's going to be in the minds of this crop of Kerry players. I actually watched the game back the other night, the 21 semi-final. I think the one thing the lads will learn from it is what not to do, to be honest with you, Adrian. Hi, Shane. You know, for a long period of that game, and certainly I would say the middle quarter, just before half time and after half time, the amount of times that the Kerry players ran into that Tyrone wall and ran into that Tyrone defence, it didn't make for good viewing. Obviously, throw in the fact then that our talisman, got injured, and that didn't help. But yeah, I don't think revenge is top of the menu, to be honest with you, Adrian. I think these Kerry players have, they've won an All-Ireland last year. Maybe not being given the credit for it that they probably deserve. And after a kind of a slow start to this season, there's chinks now that we can see that they're just coming to the top. So this is a huge test for them tomorrow, and we'll know a lot more about them, after the game.
That what not to do bit is an interesting one. Is it like the maturation another couple of years down the line of the group and just knowing in the crunch moments what to do, or was it a more deeper coaching point?
No, I think so. It's for a lot of those players on that team, it was a really, really big game that day. It was an All-Ireland senior semi-final. Of course, a lot of them would have been involved with minor and under 20 teams, but it was a huge game. And I think, they did things that, played right into the hands of Tyrone. All credit to Tyrone. They set up very well on the day. Brian Dooher and Fergal Logan had them well set up and ready for Kerry. But I think, that is the barometer now that Kerry team will be looking at. For instance, Gavin White, who's a fantastic player, and his game is built on driving forward and driving this Kerry team forward. Looking back on the game that day, the amount of times he ran down into cul-de-sacs and just basically ran into traps that Tyrone had set up for him, I don't think we'll be seeing that the next day. And from all over the pitch, I think Kerry will look to kick the ball more. I think we'll be looking to speed up our play a lot more. Against Tyrone that day, it was lethargic at times. It was repetitive. It was backing over the field. And of course, yes, in the modern game, you have to do that at times. But I think this Kerry team, and Jack has always been, we have to take into account that was Peter Keane's team. Jack has always been a real advocate of Kerry kicking the ball and kicking it at pace. Often and early would be his mantra. So I think we'll see a different approach by Kerry the next day. Will it work? We don't know. Tyrone will obviously set up waiting for that. They've watched Kerry under Jack, and we'll have to see which style comes through in the end.
Kyle, from a Tyrone point of view, the attacking threats that they have up there at the moment are quite something, and that's certainly something Kerry will be wary of. Like, I guess we talk about Darren McCurry quite a bit, but the Canavan brothers, Dara and Ruaidhri, at the moment, and we've said it before, like, they play with a smile on their face, but if those two lads have good games like they have had recently, they could cause Kerry some serious troubles.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose from a Tyrone point of view, it's nice to have another attacking threat as well as Dara and Darren up there. Ruaidhri adds that wee bit of unknown, I suppose. In Tyrone, we might have been calling out for him for a number of games previously, but he didn't get the start, and then eventually he was fired in against Westmeath, and then last week against Donegal. And you can see that he almost finished the game. He could have finished the game with 4-3 initially from the throw-in, could have got a goal. He eventually got his goal, and then he was screaming the head of the brother Dara for not slipping him in the second half, and then he rounded I think it might have been Steve McMenamin or along the line near the end and knocked it over the bar, but I think he was going for a goal. So he could have very easily finished the game with 4-3, and that's an unknown. And when we go into Croke Park, it's nice to have that, because we know that Kerry will have seen bits and pieces from him from underage, but it's how do you handle that? Which man who does Kerry designate to go and pick that up? But it's exciting from a Tyrone point of view, and from Dara Canavan's point of view, he's playing the football of his life. It's really refreshing to see. He's been dogged with injuries for a number of years. He's got a run of 1 or 2 games, and then he's picked up a bit of an ankle injury or a calf injury. So it's great to see him getting a run of games, and he has took over that mantle, not as much on the scoring charts, but also being that initial outball for Tyrone. Dara McCurry lays in that wee bit further. Dara will come deeper and pick up the ball and jink and weave his way through and set up scores as well as finish his own scores.
Well, curious, Sean, would you prefer to be in the Tyrone or Kerry camp in terms of the extra week break that Kerry have got, or the momentum that Tyrone, I guess, have got? Because you think back to the Kerry game and scoring 5 goals against Louth, it's hard to find a negative there. But Tyrone, I guess, have come through a couple of big battles in recent weeks. So is it momentum or is it rest? Which would you prefer, I guess?
I think it all depends on where you're at, Shane. Personally, right now, from hearing what I've heard, I think Kerry were better off with the week off, the extra week. They were able, as you can see from their team, which was named last night, they were obviously able to give Gavin White and Paul Ganey that extra bit of time to recover from their little knocks. And I think they're two huge players to be back in that Kerry first 15. So from that point of view, it's a bonus. I absolutely 100% agree with you as well that, often we came through the qualifiers there in my time and it was great. You were just bouncing from week to week, weekend to weekend, game to game. And that's what you want. But I think in this circumstance, I think Jack and the management team would have been quite happy to take that extra week's break just to get those type of lads in. Kyle made a good point there on Ruaidhri Canavan. Paul Murphy is back in the Kerry team. To be honest with you, I think that's specifically with Ruaidhri Canavan in mind. I think Paul brings you that real good Tigerish defending. He's a tight marker. I think he will be put on Canavan from the outset, to be honest with you. I think that's why he's back in. He's also probably back in, alluding to my previous point about getting the ball in fast and a good kick passer. Paul ticks all those boxes as well, so that's why he's back in. And obviously having the likes of Paul Ganey with that experience up front back in as well, and Gavin White, as I spoke about too, is good. So I think that extra week's break has definitely helped Kerry in this scenario, yeah.
What John, like in answer to Kyle's question there about like the Canavans, so you mentioned Rory, what do they do with Dara? And feel free to layer in some commentary about Paddy Tally here as well, because I'm sure that this is the not so secret weapon.
Yeah, look, I obviously don't know much about Paddy, just from speaking to a few of the players that the players that I'd still be in touch with, and obviously I know Diarmuid Murphy and Mike Quirk very well from our playing days. They're very impressed with Paddy. Look, he is what he is. Kyle knows a lot about him, of course. Yeah, look, he's obviously going to. It's not going to be a negative anyway, Adrian. He knows these Tyrone fellas as well, very well. And I'm sure he'll have Kerry set up, particularly when we don't have the ball, how we're going to counteract these Canavans and McCurry. I mean, these guys they're a breath of fresh air, really. Unfortunately, I was on the receiving end of them with the Kerry under-20s 2 seasons ago above in Portlaoise. Just really, really good players. Look, I suppose it's going to be difficult in terms of shutting them down. Tyrone have the same issues up the other end with the Cliffords and Ganey and Paul O'Shea, Sean O'Shea. I think Jason Foley will probably be tasked with picking up Derek Canavan, I would say, which leans for a good battle, to be honest with you. Jason's been playing very well consistently over the last couple of seasons for Kerry. And I think they'd have no choice but to go with Tom Sullivan on McCurry. Obviously, we all know about Tom's attacking prowess, but he's also a very, very good defender, and I think McCurry is in really, really good form at the moment, so I think Tom will be tasked with that. But look, remains to be seen. I think they look like the best matchups at the moment. As I said, I think Paul Murphy will go on Ruaidhri Canavan, and then the other two will probably just match up as is, with Tyg Morley and Gavin White. Tyrone will have to keep an eye on White. They'll have to put somebody on him who's defensive minded. Kyle might have his own thoughts on that, because Gavin is, as we know, very, very good at going forward once he picks and chooses his right moments to go.
Yeah, Kyle.
Yeah, those matchups are sort of something that when I seen the Kerry team named last night that I was thinking down along the same lines, but I'm not sure. Paul Murphy might be just the right man for Dara or Ruaidhri Canavan, because I think that yard of pace might suit Rory. I don't think Paul is an exceptional kick passer and a Tigerish defender, but Croke Park is a daunting place whenever those spaces open up, and Ruaidhri Canavan is freakishly quick over the ground. Doesn't look like it, but he can run, and I just don't think it will suit Paul Murphy in that regard, because I think that might be an area where Tyrone might exploit it across the half-forward line.
Kyle, if you take a step back from Tyrone for a second, they like a lot of the narrative that is around them at the minute is that like they're hitting form at the right time, obviously, and we've discussed some of the individual tools that they have that I think allows them to compete with anybody in their day. But that notwithstanding, the form is based off a win over a bad Donegal team, I think we can accept, and 2 inches after that John Heslin free from being bounced out at the championship. Like, there's a little bit of it feels to me like a bed of sand. We'll find out a lot more obviously tomorrow, but the form lines, I'm not sure that I fully buy the Tyrone are hitting form at the right time thing, or that we've seen enough evidence of that just yet.
I would agree with everything you're saying. John Haslam free kick, that could have been an end to Tyrone's season very, very easily. As I say, Donegal, there was a bit of talk about Donegal hitting a wee bit of form, but you would have fancied Tyrone going into that just with where both teams were at. But I don't, from a Tyrone point of view, I don't think we give Westmeath enough respect. I think that we went very much man on man, and we'll take them on. No, we did. They have some exceptional players, John Haslam, Ronan O'Toole. They caused Tyrone a lot of problems, and that's not how Tyrone played against Donegal. They set up that wee bit more defensive with the two wing backs dropping a wee bit deeper and hitting on the counter attack, trying to keep a couple of bodies up the pitch where they could release the kick pass. And the two of them against Donegal left those open spaces. So I would agree with you there that we have seen a very little evidence of probably as 18 months, bar a half of 70 minutes against Donegal, that we're back to our best. We'll know a whole lot more come half time tomorrow to see where this Tyrone team's at, but we can only go on the last performance, and that was a positive from a Tyrone point of view. Seeing our attack click again like that, we probably haven't seen it this couple of years. And defensively, I looked at even the likes of Ciarán McGarry. I haven't seen that type of performance probably from 2021 season. I actually watched the game back last night, and I think he had 4 turnovers in the second half. Sean referenced Gavin White running down cul-de-sacs. I think Ciarán McGarry was the cause of 3 of those, and that's why he picked up Player of the Year in 2021. So Tyrone will be looking to get their energy from turnovers and hit Kerry as much as they can on the counter-attack, because as Sean rightly referenced, last time I was talking to Gavin Devlin, the Louth manager, who's our club manager, and he was saying that he could not get over the quality of the Kerry kick passing. They had game plan set up to try and nullify that, but they could not get here. Every single pass was to the forward side. There was never a chance of a defender getting the hand in, and that's where ultimately undone them for 5 goals.
Are either of you, as we wrap, willing to predict against your county?
Not down here anyway.
Have you ever heard a Kerry man back against them, to be honest?
Oh, often.
Look, I think Kerry, obviously, we saw our group and had a very bad day out against Mayo. Played a little bit better against, now that we see is a very good Cork team all of a sudden, and yes, as Kyle said, we put in a very good performance against Louth. So, I mean, when you look at who's left in the championship, 3 of the teams are from Kerry's group, a group that Kerry topped, so it's not all doom and gloom down here. I think that the group actually ended up being very, very good for Kerry, because it gave them it opened their eyes a little bit and also gave them a good test, bar the Louth game, obviously. So I think we're in a good place going in. I think we're going to need a massive performance to beat Tyrone. Yes, I get your thinking, Adrian, that their form hasn't been fantastic, but as Kyle said, they're going off their last performance. They'll come in upbeat into Croke Park, where when they see a green and gold jersey, they always seem to flick a switch. Whatever's in them up there, I don't know, but they seem to flick this switch and just turn in a performance. But Kerry just need to be ready, and certainly I think it comes down to, as always, who has their hands on the ball the most, because we both have very, very good sets of forwards, and if we can supply them with the ammunition, as I said, early and often, both sets of defenders could be in for a long day. I'm hoping it's going to be a good game, but I would plump for Kerry by maybe 2 or 3 points. Yeah.
Last word to you, Kyle.
I don't. I suppose I'm optimistic just on regard to that Tyrone, as Sean says, flicks that switch. I think it nearly comes from a bit of a siege mentality. Siege mentality that we're always wrote off in the media. That's whenever Tyrone play their best football. So when you go in against Kerry 9 times out of 10, you're the underdog, and that's where Tyrone thrive. So I'm thinking from a midfield point of view, we might have the upper hand there. I think we have the best midfield partnership in the country at the moment. So that might give us a good front handle on the game, and if we can win that area and supply our forwards, I think we're in with a shout. So I'm not ruling out extra time again, but I'm quietly confident maybe a Tyrone victory by 1 or 2.
Yeah, so Shayne McConville saying penalties, we'd take that as a neutral, we'd settle for. Thanks a million, lads. Enjoy the game.
Thanks, lads.
Thanks.
Cheers, man.
Sean O'Sullivan, Kyle Coney on the line there. Paddy Christie is with us. Good morning to you, Paddy.
How's it going? How are
you get the deciding vote then. Who's going to win that
one? Kerry and Tyrone.
Yeah.
I still wouldn't go too far from Kerry.
Yeah.
Still got the pedigree there, you know.
I think you're right. I think there's too much been made of the formats of Tyrone, if I'm being honest. Like the two lads obviously are the Canavans are just off the charts, and I guess when you have those in your team then everything becomes slightly more 50-50, but
I still think like Kerry won in All Ireland last year. They were very good. I mean, they couldn't have gone back that far, and you'd wonder whether it's just they're just going through the motions for the last while. But like when it comes down to it, they see that Tyrone jersey, they're gonna, you know, I can imagine in Croke Park in a quarter-final with Tyrone, I'd say they'll be well up for it.
How are you? We'll get to the Dublin-Mayo preview in a little bit, but how are you feeling about life after the year that you had? It was, geez, you were really close in both the Leinster Championship and the Tailteann Cup to coming up. You came up short narrowly against teams that ended up having a good run.
Yeah, it was a strange one. Like, we had a disappointing league, obviously, and then you went to the championship, obviously on a bit of a downer, but we came sort of regrouped and had quite a good performance with Offaly. And obviously they went on to do quite well, reasonably, and then I suppose and wheels come off for them as well. But like from that point of view and from the down point of view afterwards in the Tailteann Cup, the down game, like we felt we were really in that game for 50 minutes, and then they got a goal and they changed the game. But you'd expect that down will be very, very hard to beat in that final, and I suppose if they win it, it might put a slightly different complexion on things. Like we felt we really played well in that first half, and I suppose we had a couple of chances that might have just put us a bit further ahead that we didn't take. Just the nature of football, but like it's a hard one to put your finger on. How do you feel about the year? There was ups and downs along the way. We started off with a great old Bawn Cup, and then poor National League. Then it's a half decent, decent performance against Offaly in the Championship. Then a couple of good performances in Tailteann Cup and a poor one as well. So like it's a mixed bag.
Can you take any positives from that league campaign? I know like Longford I think had been in Division 3 for 8 years, so it kind of made your home there. But next year face a Division 4 campaign. I guess in one sense promotion is the obvious target, and you could build up a little bit of steam beating some teams, getting a few results, so I guess there's positives to take from it as well.
Yeah, well you have to, I mean there's always, you can be always trying to put spins on things, and sometimes it's real and sometimes it's artificial. Like I think it's a genuine, from my point of view, having been involved with Tipperary, the same thing happened, went down to Division 4. Actually started poorly in Division 4, ended up getting momentum and winning a load of games in a row. And getting to a league final, playing well in the league final in Croke Park. Very, very unlucky to be beaten by Cavan by a point, and you know that was a really, really good year overall, and that gives you a bit of hope. Then when you're looking at that, you're sort of saying, yeah, Longford can definitely do that. You don't want to be down in Division 4, but realistically speaking, the leagues don't usually lie. Like if you lose a number of games in the league, you know you have to hold your hand up and say, look, we weren't good enough this year. Like,
is this the end of your second full year?
No, this is first year. Okay. Yeah.
So that wry grin is like, give me a chance here. I'm well, like how is there? I was interested because it was in my mind before you mentioned it about that sort of, particularly from a manager's point of view, when you get to the end of the year and all bar one county has something negative to reflect on at some point or another, and that balance of trying to be, not to be comical alley about it, that you need to actually own some of the stuff, like a general sense of progression. Or what's your sense of, like, you're going to regroup again in what, when will you?
I suppose October, November is
what your chat be with the group when you get back?
Well, I suppose the goals, you'll always start with goals, like we would have started this year or back in October last year, November, and your goals for the league, for the championship, for the Tailteann Cup. For us this year, I was hopeful that we would get to a Tailteann Cup semi-final. I felt that if we did that, get to play in Croke Park is a big thing for me. Like, I saw the effect I had with Tipperary. Obviously they would have won a Munster in 2020 in an empty stadium. It was fantastic, but it was an empty stadium. But to go out to Croke Park and play and play well. I think that just brings everything on. Ultimately, I suppose the following year the Tipperary didn't go great, but like I still think overall for progression for a county, for a so-called smaller county, and like the Carlows and the Wexfords and the Tipperaries and the Longfords and all the teams in Division 3 and Division 4, for them to play in Croke Park and play well, it's a big deal. So for me, that was a big deal this year. The fact that we didn't get there was disappointing, and it's something that you want to go for next year. You've got a couple of chances now, because you definitely feel that you can get to a Division 4 league final, and you'd be in Croke Park, and you feel that, you know, with a few things falling the right way, you could get into a Tailteann Cup semi-final. So therefore, you know, and I suppose realistically speaking, if we'd have pipped Offaly this year, we were beaten by a point in both league and championship, and in the championship this year, if we'd have pipped Offaly, you possibly could have got on to into Croke Park as well. But that's a big deal, I think, for that for the county to go on. I think they need to get to Croke Park and play well in Croke Park. I
know you would have been involved, Paddy, in different summer camps and summers in Longford and stuff. That would have maybe got you on the radar of people within the GAA circles in that county. What have been the biggest challenges for you managing a team like Longford? Even I think, you know, from a rural sense, I guess player retention is a difficult one year on year, and trying to get lads to stay put, and I guess getting that commitment. Is that one of the main challenges for you?
Yeah, well, that's linked to belief. Like, you know, it's very, very easy for the Dublins and the Kerrys, the Tyrones of this world, and even at that, they still lose players. But like, it's very, very easy to justify for a player who's number 30 in the panel or 32 in the panel. You know, they have a good chance of success with those counties. You know, there's a good bit of glamour involved. You're playing in Croke Park regularly. Everything is sort of set up for you there. Whereas in the smaller counties, you know, would a fella who's number 27 or 28 in the panel, is the same attraction there for him? Honestly, probably not. And that's the hardest thing, because you'll always keep your 20 or 22 key players in the panel, and most of them are getting football all the time. But it's very, very hard to keep the other lads involved. We were lucky this year. Like we lost a few lads here or there, but we started off with a huge panel and we sort of kept it fairly well. But like a lot of the smaller counties would lose players regularly, particularly when it comes to April and May. And you have the allure of America and that sort of thing. So like, that's I suppose that, again, coming back to your question, that's linked to confidence. Like, if somebody, and belief, and if somebody believes that it's worth doing it, worth sticking at it, they're gonna keep at it. And that obviously has a knock-on effect, because if you get all those fellas committing, then eventually it probably will happen, and then you'll have genuine cause for having those beliefs. But until then, you're sort of treading on thin ice. Like, it's difficult, because any sort of a setback at all can knock you back a bit. Like, when Dublin underage players are coming through when they're 19 or 20, they honestly will fully believe they're going to win an All-Ireland, because they've seen it right in front of them. But those smaller counties don't. So it's how to do that without being able to win all the time. And still, I suppose for me, from my point of view, what I try and do is I have a very good crew and the management with me, and we try to do good training sessions with the lads and have it as professional as we can. And that's our way of trying to, you know, put in the very firm foundations for the future. And if they come back, if they want to come training all the time, you hope then eventually the results will come onto the pitch, and then you can start going further afield then.
What do you enjoy most about management, and who are you looking at in GAA or in different sports as the people that you'd like to emulate?
The nice thing about the management, and I look after the Sigerson team in DCU as well, and I have the same thing in both. I have a good crew of people around me, and I enjoy that. Like, it's lovely, and I was very lucky. I walked into that in Tipperary because I wasn't able to pick my own people, but it turns out when I came in myself with other people, there were some great people around. So I've been very lucky in that, and that's something that I think I always want to try and be involved with, because I always want to have an involvement with good people, because it's very, very difficult if you don't have that. And thankfully I haven't had that situation as a manager, but I've been a player with setups where management didn't get on, and you could sense it straight away. You didn't even need to hear any rows or anything like that. You just knew that it wasn't a good vibe around the place, and I suppose that's important. And as regards who you'd be sort of looking at, like the lads who I would have always I suppose in GAA circles, I would be a big fan of Mickey Hart, and it's ironic that Tyrone are playing Kerry again this weekend, but I would have felt that I took a Ballymun underage team twice, 2 phases, 2 10-year phases. Philly McMattins is probably the most famous guy from the first phase, and then second phase will be when he was finished up at 21s was Evan Comerford, Paddy Small, those sort of fellas were all on that team, and I suppose I would have felt in the second team we're a very strong team with those guys, and a load of other fellas who played Dublin-Mayo, Dublin 21s, and I would have tried to copy Mickey Hart with a lot of stuff. Like, I would have, copy is a strong word, but certainly would have taken little bits and pieces about what he said and what he did.
Okay, more less on the tactical side is more.
Correct, yeah. Okay. I think I'd have to say now I'm not that strong tactically.
Really?
Yeah, I wouldn't feel that I'd be that, and I brought in some very good people with me who are.
Yeah.
So this year with Longford, like I had Desi Slime with me, who'd be like, I'd call him a master tactician. I'd say he goes to sleep at night thinking about formations and you know how to set up defensively and offensively. Like, those sort of people are hard to get, and I'd feel that I'm weak in that area. So you get in other people who are good at it. You know,
there's more on the sort of leadership, man management type.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and trying to get, I suppose, trying to get players to develop things themselves, trying to get leaders in the group themselves rather than trying to do everything yourself. I suppose I would have learned with Ballymun. I took the first team in 1996-97. That was Philly McMahon's team, and I did an awful lot of stuff myself.
All right.
And I felt that was good, and I was in control of everything, and it didn't really matter about anyone else. But the problem with that setup is, and that system is that if you were ever gone, then, because these things will happen, someone could move to a different country, they could move to a different part of the world, they could get sick, they could die, anything could happen. And the thing about it is, if there's not other good people around to carry it on, it doesn't work. So like I would be a big believer in getting really good quality people in, so that it's not driven by one person, and then having players doing that, players driving things and having them involved in it, rather than you being sort of the be all and end all. I think that doesn't work long term.
You mentioned Desi Sloan there. I know yourself and Desi were named on Declan Shaw's coaching ticket for the Mayo game.
Yeah, that's right.
I know Kevin McStay ultimately got the job, but do you look back at that now in hindsight, and hindsight's obviously 2020, but with a bit of almost happiness that obviously the Longford gig came about as a result, as a number one role. So was it better in the end that it worked out that way, or how do you look at it?
I don't. It's not something I've thought about too much, to be honest with you. The only thing was, when I was asked at the time to get involved, I was finishing up with Tipperary, so like I'd done 3 years, and I felt that there wasn't probably much more in me with that. Just run out of steam with things, and you just wanted something different. So I threw myself in with that. But like, was I looking at the results afterwards, wondering whether it'd be good or bad to be involved? No, I honestly haven't. It worked out quite well for me, because Desi Slime was one of the lads who was obviously meant to be involved, was on part of the management setup for me, well, the one that was being thrown into the hat. And obviously I ended up talking to him, and then these things happen, just little connections like that, and like I said, you got him involved, which like I feel has been a very strong addition to the whole group. So no, I like from on a very practical level, lads, just the travelling involved would have been absolutely savage as well. And don't get me wrong, you do it particularly because you like doing it and that sort of thing, but like Tipperary was a good old trip now sometimes. Like a lot of the time we were in Thurles, other times you were in Clonmel, and Feathered as well. We started doing sessions in Feathered near the end of a new all-weather setup down there, so like they're long trips. And when you double them, they become really long. So I suppose 3.5 hours to Mayo multiplied by 2 gives you 7. Like, as a primary school teacher, I know my basic maths. So like 7 hours, and then talk about your probably 2 hours on the pitch, and maybe a meeting afterwards. That turns into 10 hours nearly. And it's, when you have a job, like it's I'm principal of a school, so like it's not as if that you can just sort of say, well, look, I can come and go as I please.
You're not going to do a Colin O'Rourke anytime soon, are you?
I don't know. Well, I could be left for just a school job, because you wouldn't know that no one might want me in the GAA circles, but like and maybe the school won't want me either, I don't know, but it's hard to manage all those things. There are little sticking points during the year, and like with the Sigerson, say January there, and O'Byrne Cup, and then you're back in school. And it gets to a point where you're just very, very. I felt at one stage that, thank God I've got good people with me, because in DCU and the Sigerson team we've some great people. Same with Longford, and then with the school, the staff are great in there. So it's sort of those things can run themselves, but you can't sort of step back forever and sort of say, oh, everything will be grand. Like, you have to sort of be still around.
Parnell Park would be a much handier option for you.
Well, no, I'd say I've enjoyed the stuff with the smaller counties, the so-called smaller counties, and to be honest with you, with people are always giving you a bit of stick over that. How come you wouldn't get involved with Dublin or whatever, that sort of thing? But it's just one of those things. It's just fallen that way, and whoever's involved, they've a good crew of guys there. But like,
would you like to at some point?
It's another one of those, like, a couple of people have said it to me, but like, it's not something that ever sits in me for some reason. I don't know, it's a weird thing. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but like, I played for 11 years with Dublin, and when I finished, I went back and I threw me lot in with Ballymun. I sort of forgot all about Dublin. It was as if, like, I still would know the lads down there, and like John Costello was recently finished up, but like John would be in contact with me over the years, and he'd be help me with different things like that. So, and I call down to Parnell Park to watch a match or something every so often, not often, but every so often, and the lads would be talking to you as if you were never gone. But it's funny, it's one of those. I think the same happened with my old school. I was in a school in Ballymun for 17 years, and then next thing I was gone. I was just bang. It's as if the shutters come down, you drive on, and you drive forward, you don't look back. Maybe that's the type of person I am, but it hasn't really ever. It hasn't come across. Even when with Dublin matches, people say, "Oh, where are you sitting?" A lot of the time, I to be honest with you, I don't have the time. But I'd find myself just sort of watching the game, and I might every so often go out and go onto the phone or do something else. It's not as I'm just not totally the Dublin thing. Sort of when you finish playing with me, other fellas still are. I think there's other fellas of my vintage who are still sitting in the stand and still totally into it. Me, I suppose I just do different things in life, and I put a lot into whatever I'm doing with DCU or the school or with Longford. But then I sort of just the rest of it I just sort of step away from.
I think that might be to your advantage if you were to ever decide to do it again, to be absolutely honest. Did we bring you in specifically to preview Dublin-Mayo? I'm not so sure anymore if that was the case, but we better leave you with a question about it and what you expect to happen.
I think I'm fairly sure that Mayo are capable of beating Dublin in a once-off game. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But if you were to ask me if to put me €5 me €10, like, I'd still be going with Dublin, simply because I have this very long-winded thing about the attacking power and the scoring threat, and sure, the Longford fellas always be sick of hearing me talking about scoring threat. I always think, I suppose it comes from your baggage, from your own career, and we would have had difficulties up front, and I'm sure the lads in the forward line at that time would say that they had difficulties in the back because of me, but like, I would have felt that we didn't score enough with Dublin in my career. And then I've always thinking of that. I'm always thinking of that with other teams, and so it's with DCU and Longford. And I suppose to come back to Mayo, I just wonder on any given day if they have a lot of possession, will they convert? Like, because I know that with the likes of Conor O'Callaghan and Paul Mannion and these fellas, like, you can't even be sure if they're all starting. But like, if they get a ball 20 metres out, 30 metres out, and they're one-on-one, they're going to go by their man and they're going to go for goal, like, and you better watch out. I just don't know about, like, I think Ryan is I don't know who there with Mayo has that sort of a look about him. He's a bit of a buzz about him, and Aidan O'Shea might blow hot there, and on the edge of the square I still think traditional sort of man on the edge of the square could win a ball and do a bit of damage, but they're ifs. Whereas I think with Conor O'Callaghan and those type of players, Cormac Costello, they're proven. Like, I just can't. If they get a lot of ball, I think they're going to do a lot of damage.
Yeah, I think it'll be an awful lot tighter than the other game, if I'm being absolutely honest, that we were previewing a bit earlier on. Loads of comments coming in here, and I'll leave it on Michael saying that he's perfect for the Dubs job, in my opinion. Very impressive man when you meet him, and I think there's a lot of that same vibe coming in. Real pleasure to spend the last 20 minutes with you. Thanks a million for coming in.
No problem, lads. Nice meeting you.
It's almost 9 o'clock. You're watching OTB AM, the sports breakfast show from Off the Ball. We have still loads to come. Shayne Murphy, the Manchester City strength and conditioning coach, coming in just a little bit. I want to remind you as well that Off the Ball is coming to the Cork Podcast Festival. It's the Sunday, the 27th of August, in the Cork Opera House. I mentioned it earlier on. There are 2 amazing Cork names lined up for this. We can't reveal them just yet, but we will be doing that very shortly, and you will want tickets for it. Don't miss out. Great night of conversation and crack in the heart of the Rebel County. Tickets at corkpodcastfestival.ie/off-the Labour-Ball. And we'll probably put that link up somewhere. It will be much easier for you to get access to it. We're going to talk about the Labour Party's plans for the beautiful game in Ireland in just a little bit. The Labour Party leader, Ivana Bacik, is standing by outside. Before all of that, Abby Larkin in conversation with Aisling.
Tell us about being told that you were going, what it was like, and making that call then to your family.
Oh, it's amazing. Obviously, Vera called us in as the players that were going as a group, and she said it to us, and I was like, oh my God. I think I actually started crying and stuff. I was like so happy, you know. I then told my dad, and we got in the car. He also started crying. My mum did not know until I went home. Her stomach was in knots because she hadn't a clue what was going on. And I told her, and she also started crying. She screamed first, and then she started crying. So they're so proud.
It obviously means a lot to them too. They've seen what you sacrificed to get here, and obviously probably what they sacrificed too in order to get you to play at the top level.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think they know that I had that dedication from the start. I never was into going out, and obviously I liked socialising with some of my friends, but there was times where I couldn't, and it was hard. But I think my love for the sport kind of took over, and obviously it led me here today. So I'm more than grateful. And my mum and dad have been so supportive throughout everything. Like any training, they'd both come up and watch and stay for the whole training session. All the girls would be saying to me, "Your mum and dad's always here." I was like, "Yeah, they love watching me train. Even like just training, like anything, they'd come out and watch." And then obviously matches, they love it. So
So will they be going to Australia?
Of course, they have their flights booked and everything. Yeah, they're going 100%.
Yeah, loads more from Abby Larkin, and more of the women's national team you can check out on our YouTube channel, including that show at the Mansion House during the week, an absolute cracker. It is 9 o'clock. In a couple of weeks' time, the Labour Party are going to take a motion to the Dáil to call for more investment in football infrastructure, greater focus on gender equality, and the introduction of a football programme at transition year. And to discuss that, I'm delighted to say we're joined in studio by TD, leader of the Labour Party, Ivana Bacik. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Adrian. Thank you for inviting me on. My first time on a sports programme, so I'm somewhat apprehensive. It is a bucket list thing, and it's a delight to be in this studio. You have it made beautifully homely. It's not like a radio studio at all.
Good.
It's really nice.
That's definitely the objective. Set out your stall.
Well, in the Labour Party, we're very serious about football, about the need to invest in football. My colleague Ivana Reardon has really championed this issue for many, many years, because we all know that football is the Cinderella of Irish sport, that there's been significant underinvestment. If you compare football to GAA or to rugby, significant underinvestment, and yet it's the biggest participation sport in Ireland. You know, when you look at the numbers now playing, and the numbers in particular of young girls and women playing, and that's my particular passion, is to see greater gender equality in sport. So that's really why we in Labour have come together to put forward in the Dáil on the 12th of July a motion calling on the government to ensure, significantly ramped up investment in football. And I suppose we're doing this on the back of the FAI strategic plan that they've just recently announced, where they're looking for a really substantial investment from government, over 800 million over 15 years, and they've set out a really clear pathway to reach I suppose greatly enhanced infrastructure, both at grassroots level and at League of Ireland level, and then of course also at international level, where they're really pushing forward. So we're doing it on the back of that, but also because of course the Irish women's team are going to be playing in the World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. They've absolutely captured the hearts of the nation. I mean, I was so proud and so honoured to have witnessed them play recently in Tala in one of the qualifiers, Ireland-Finland, in September, but to see the way that the games both here and abroad have captured imagination, to see my daughters who've been playing for years, to see how they and their cohort and younger girls again are just so enthused and motivated by the women's team. So I think now is the time for us really to call on government to change the dynamic in sports funding, to ensure that football gets the recognition it deserves. Not to take away from other sports, I would hasten to add now, Adrian, but because we recognise the importance of sport investment generally. But the reality is Ireland has underinvested invested in sport overall compared to other European countries, and football in particular is the Cinderella, the poor cousin, and we do need to enhance the investment in football because it lifts the spirit of a nation. It's huge, but it's also important for equality and inclusion, not just for women, to bring forward more women and girls at a time when only about a third of clubs have women's toilets. I mean, it's that basic. We heard from Lisa Fallon at a briefing we did this week in the Dáil that girls playing soccer, and I know it myself, seeing having been a parent and a coach with FAI, that trying to change on a field, trying to change into your sports jersey on a field with no changing facilities. That's the reality of grassroots football in Ireland. So we need to change that. So we're calling on government to step up the investment for football.
Can I ask just about that specifically, because there's a lot of what you say there that makes total sense, that's inarguable around the facilities piece for grassroots specifically. Where it starts to get more complicated for me is around so like you say, it was obviously an FAI ask for the 863 million, I think the number was, to include investment, and you mentioned it there, around the League of Ireland, for example. And I know Labour talk a little bit about the investment in a football industry and the bringing Champions League football to Ireland. First bit I totally get around grassroots, encouraging kids to get involved, encouraging girls to get involved. What's the angle for Labour around the League of Ireland piece specifically?
Well, I think the reality is that what motivates children, boys and girls, to get involved in any sport is to see it on the screen, to see it being taught, to hear it being talked about, to have it within the culture. Like I say, the success of the women's team has not only brought more young girls in. Our academy in Larkview FC, where my daughters have played, the academy is now growing massively. We're seeing 5, 6, 7-year-old girls coming into play because they're hearing their parents talk about women playing. They're seeing women playing on the TV. When one of my girls, was 5 or 6, I remember her watching a game with me on TV, one of the men's team game, and saying to me, "Why are the women playing on the screen?" So I think you have to invest at all levels. There's a synergy between them. You can't grow a grassroots unless people are seeing success or at least investment in the international and of course League of Ireland. And again, there's been significant underinvestment there. I mean, if you look at the League of Ireland stadiums around the country, you can see that. You see in Richmond Park and in Inchicore, where we've gone numerous times. We've only got the Aviva, or Lansdowne as I prefer to call it in my own constituency, and we've got Tala and we've got Turner's Cross. But they're the only 3 stadiums out of 40 in Ireland that play football and that have in the top 40. So the underinvestment.
Can I ask on that?
You can't bring forward grassroots. Sorry, Adrian, you can't bring forward the grassroots, I think, without also investing or being seen to value football at other levels.
Can I ask you about that specifically? Because I think that it's inarguable that outside of some of the grounds that you've mentioned, some of the League of Ireland grounds need big time investment. I would understand why the FAI might be looking for money for that. I think one of the things we saw post London 2012, for example, was this promise of legacy, that if we build this thing and we make this investment, that there will be this great legacy. I think that we should stop talking about that as a thing, to be absolutely honest, because I don't believe for a second that I think that people will be inspired, for example, by the Ireland team being at Australia, New Zealand. But I think there are much more important things that can happen, that need to happen, that I think that the likes of Labour and government parties need to pay more attention to, and certainly have more investment around in relation to the grassroots piece. But on the League of Ireland grounds bit specifically, I don't think it's true to say that if we make investment in League of Ireland clubs and facilities that it's suddenly going to result in a big groundswell of they need attention. So I don't want to be seen as making a point that they shouldn't be invested in, but I think they shouldn't be conflated with a point about trying to grow grassroots football or encourage girls to get involved.
Well, I agree with you, of course. It's not a silver bullet or anything like that. And when you have such a basic issue as girls' toilets not being available in 2/3 of clubhouses, well, that's absolutely right. That's the priority to tackle, is getting the grassroots investment in place. But I do think the FAI are right in their strategic plan to identify it as a 3-pronged approach, that you do also have to invest along with grassroots in League of Ireland and at international level, bringing up the training standards and so on, because we've exported all our best players for so long, and again it just, I think, is symptomatic of a lack of valuing of the game and a lack of valuing of the players. It's only 7 years since the women had to strike to get pay parity at the international team. That's the sort of undervaluing that I think diminishes support for a game and has a knock-on effect on the numbers coming into it, even at that very young age. And I do think we're going to see, it's undoubtedly the case, we're going to see a massive influx, I think, of girls and women coming into the sport as a result of the World Cup this summer. There's no doubt about that. So it does have a knock-on effect. It's not automatic, and I agree with you that grassroots should be the priority. But I think you also do need to see investment at League of Ireland and at international level.
You referenced football being like the Cinderella of Irish sport, which is fair enough. I do think there are a lot of other sports in the country that maybe see themselves as the Cinderella of Irish sport. So how do you stop this becoming, I guess, to the detriment, this investment in football as being to the detriment of other sports who of course want a lot of money themselves? Yeah,
I think that's fair, and certainly we'll be addressing that in our motion, that it's not going to be a zero-sum game. We're not saying level down, in other words, reduce funding from everyone else. Far from it, as I say. And again, I think the FAI have been very clear, and I've talked to them about it in their strategic plan, that they're saying, overall sport funding in Ireland is too low. Let's bring it up more generally. Let's bring football up to the level of other sports like Gaelic and rugby. And certainly, I suppose there's been that historic disparity in treatment, because for so long GAA was the official national sport, if you like. The ban until 1971 for Gaelic players in playing Gaelic to play soccer. Football seen as the garrison game traditionally. So there's a class and a sort of national issue here about the playing of football, and yet it has become the biggest participation sport. It's hugely important across so many communities. Investment in football is about investing, in many cases, in bringing up the level of advantage in a community that might be disadvantaged, because traditionally it's been a working class game compared, for example, to rugby, always seen as a middle class game. So these are the issues that in Labour we're interested in exploring in our motion, but it's not about investing in football at the expense of other sports. Far from it. It's about trying to ensure we have a better sporting infrastructure across the country, because it's good for all of our health. And I speak as somebody who as a child hated team sport, never played team. I think I made it as a sub in the minor F netball team in my secondary school. But I happen to have sporty children, and it's so important to keep kids in sport, particularly teenage girls, that we have that investment, that we have that basic infrastructure, changing rooms, toilets, a valuing of women in sport. The difference it makes to go and see the women's team play in Tala is incredible. To see the crowds, to see the investment in Tala, and it's super to see the final stage of the stadium finished. It's a brilliant stadium, but to go and see teams playing in sort of substandard stadia, to see lack of facilities, that I think just demotivates children and adults from playing.
How do you convince people? So I know Ivana Bacik, I think, had put forward a proposal similar to this in June of 2021, or certainly a couple of years ago. These kind of ideas were being mooted, but for people who are sceptical maybe and say that obviously coming into election time, people, these are populist policies that everyone is going to agree with, but how do you then, I guess, promise to those people that these things are still going to be pushed for and promised after elections?
Well, look, I don't think anyone could accuse Aon of being a fair weather football fan, and I have to pay tribute to Aon O'Riordan. Clearly he's driving this. He, our sports spokesperson, Senator Mark Wall also. I mean, we have so many people in our parliamentary party who are absolutely passionate about football. I'm thinking of Michael D. Higgins, of course, our great president, who as a Labour TD, and indeed many years before he was a TD, was hugely involved in Galway United. At the night Michael D. was elected in 2011, the Galway United team all came up to Dublin to celebrate with him. So, we have a long track record of support for football at grassroots, League of Ireland and at international level. We're very serious about this. Aon produced a football manifesto for Labour in the 2020 general election. He tells me we were the only party to produce a manifesto on football. So we're coming to this with a long track record. We think the timing is right for the motion because of the FAI strategy and because of the World Cup performance. Obviously, it's a good time. But we are very hopeful, Shayne, that we'll have cross-party support. And indeed, we're seeking a really positive response from government to this, because we do think now is the time for investment in football. The FAI has really, cleaned up its act, may I say, on governance. It's really impressive to see how they're investing now in girls and women's football in particular, and that's paying off. You see the incredible role models like Vera Pauw, like the great Abby Larkin, who I've had the pleasure pleasure of meeting. These women really need our support, and I think this is the time for us to be looking for cross-party support in the Dáil. And we had a briefing in the Dáil last week. We had Lisa Fallon in, we had others in, and we had TDs and senators from all parties there who were hugely supportive of the principles behind our motion. So this is not a populist gesture in any way. I would hate people to think that. This is about trying to consolidate support for investment in the biggest participation sport in Ireland.
Do the GAA get too much of a share of the pie?
Well, look, I don't want to annoy any GAA fans, and I want to give a shout out to Ranelagh Gales, who are the fantastic big local club in my own constituency, and again, my kids have played with them. So, there's huge grassroots investment and participation in Gaelic, and it's fantastic to see. But again, it's not a zero-sum game. Loads of the kids who play Gaelic, during the week are playing soccer at weekends and vice versa. So I think it brings every sport up when you see participation. Again, I see it with my own kids, speaking of somebody who wasn't a sporty kid, that if you're involved in a sport, you're going to be involved in more sports. You're going to have an interest in sport. And most Gaelic fans I know are also watching football, often British Premier League football too. So I think, yes, traditionally Gaelic was of course the favoured sport. That was the national policy, until relatively recently. But I think now we're seeing a recognition that you can play, of course you should and can play both types of sport. You can also have an interest in rugby and another, even in cricket. We're seeing cricket taking on a new fan base in Ireland as well. So I think investment in sport grows, in a sport tends to grow support for sports and participation in sport.
Could you do anything municipally with the because I know Jerry McEnany, when he was talking about this, the FAI president, did talk about it not just being one code, I think he referenced, or not just one sport either. Is there some way that this could be harnessed in a way that, because I see every community sees it, where you have amazing facilities in one sport in this area, and there's absolutely, when communities are working together, those facilities are used for all sports, but that's not coming from the top down.
Yeah, that tends to be a more organic thing, and I've talked to Jerry about this. He and I share a Cork background. I spent some years living in Cork as a child, so I think that's right. I think it's more, we have to develop a system where we are sharing sports facilities. And again, in the FAI plan talks about trying to do that when you're doing when you're investing at international level in training, that we should have a national football training centre, that could be a shared campus. Of course it should. And Abbottstown, that was the great ambition, of course. And I think there's some scepticism, I suppose, among many of us about the big ticket items, and I think that dates back to the days of the Bertie Bowl and so on. And there's a little so I think there is a bit of, unfortunately, we've become sceptical about investment in big sports facilities, and yet when you go to Tallaght, when you see the investment there, and I'm old enough to remember the development of what I'm still calling the Lansdowne Stadium, so it does make a big difference. And Croke Park, of course, is a super facility. So, it does make a difference, makes people feel much better about the sport and I think it does encourage participation to see investment at that level too. While again, the grassroots has to be prioritised.
One last one for me, just because you have mentioned a lot about equality and the equity of access to facilities, and in a week or a couple of weeks where we spent an awful lot of time as a nation discussing how the taxpayers' dollar is getting spent. Yes. The GAA, I think, get 20 million or thereabouts in state funding a year, and I ask specifically in relation to the conversation that's come up, the threatened action from the LGFA players, camogie players, around the lack of not getting enough money for expenses and the various actions that they're taking. And there's obviously an ongoing conversation in relation to the integration of the various organisations. There's a very easy step here with taxpayers' money that the GAA could preempt all of those conversations about the integration and step in and do something about this in the short. It's not a situation that's tenable, and I wonder if there's a way with taxpayers' money that's already been spent on the GAA specifically, that the government or that somebody can step in and say, can we preempt all of that stuff? It's very difficult to make a case against doing it. It's just figuring out a way to do it. But I'm just conscious, because you did speak a lot about that equality piece. This is a real live conversation, and it feels like there've been sort of, players have been left out to look after themselves here.
Yeah, what we're seeing with the LGFA is very, very similar to what happened with women's football some years ago. I referenced the strike and the PFAI support for that, which was really important in getting pay equity there. But we're seeing, I think, across all sports, women seeking and fighting for equality with men, and I think it's hugely positive to see that. I do think the GAA should respond, and I think they will, very positively to it. But I agree with you. Do
you think they should step in and find a way? They've just had a bonus round of preliminary or quarterfinals that would have delivered millions. They're going to have another bumper weekend at Croke Park this weekend. Yeah. There is a way to make a small gesture that would mean a lot in the meantime. Do you think they should do that?
Yes, I do. Yes, absolutely. And I do, in our motion we're going to, I think they should anyway, but I also think in our motion, which we're finalising the drafting of, we're going to be referencing how you ensure gender equality across board. Are there mechanisms from the state side, from the government side, around funding, stipulations on funding, for example, that could be used in that way? But I do think the GAA should step up anyway. And I think, it's been very positive to see the FAI and see pay equity there. It's hugely important. But again, it's also about it's not necessarily about the stick as well. It's about the carrot. It's about ensuring that there's capacity in organisations to bring forward new players and young players and investment in diversity generally. I mean, I wanted to give a shout out to David Rake, who's works for the FAI and brings forward girls football at school level, and that to have an individual working on the ground bringing forward. He helped us hugely. We set up a club, Inchicore Girls as it was, and now merged with Larkview FC in Kimmage. But we got huge help from him particularly, and from the FAI in starting up a girls club years ago. And it's that kind of stuff that keeps people involved and supports giving parents like me a chance to do coaching courses. That's the kind of stuff that really helps, as well as ensuring pay equity for women playing at a higher level. But it's about ensuring parents and particularly girls and children feel supported. And I think across all sports that's really important.
Yeah. Well, I think, like we talked about the Women's World Cup, in terms of optics, I think what's going on with the Camogie players and the LGFA players at the minute is embarrassing to us as a nation. I think people of influence need to call that out, and we need to do more to quickly solve it. It's an embarrassment.
Yeah, and the GAA do need to step up. I think you're right about that.
All right, well look, we're going to watch this space. We've also reached out to the Minister for Sport, Thomas Byrne, to come onto the show and lay out the government's plans, I guess, to get a response to
that
your
would be
own
great.
ideas as
Let's hope you hear from him soon
to go on. Ivana Bacik, thanks a million for coming in. Hopefully the first of many, and we'll watch this with progress over the next few weeks and beyond. So thanks a lot for coming in.
I'd be delighted to come back. Thank you for inviting me.
A few highlights on the OTB Podcast Network today. You can check out our roadshow with Vera Powell and the Girls in Green at the Mansion House during the week. An absolute bumper show. Quality content there. Podcast available now. League of Ireland Match Day with Stephen Doyle is available there, and Ruaidhri O'Connor was in conversation with Nathan on the show last night. Johnny Sexton's potential, his definite disciplinary hearing upcoming over the next couple of weeks was a big part of that. Now, after the break, we're going to speak with the Manchester City and Scotland performance coach Shayne Murphy, and during the break, a clip from the latest episode of the Hurling Pod, where the 4-time All-Star defender Paul Murphy says that Conor Whelan is one of the most difficult corner forwards to mark in hurling. The Hurling Pod, by the way, live, is off to the Borgosh Energy Theatre in Dublin in July. You are invited. We're going to be joined on stage by James Gale and Paul Murphy, of course, as well as special guest Joe Canning, who will be there. More hurling legends to be announced very shortly. We'll debate the 2023 season, of course, preview the final at that stage as well. It's July 20th. It's the Borgosh Energy Theatre. It's an exclusive off-air event. Tickets are limited, so don't delay. You can head along to offtheball.com/events, and even if you needed more reason to head along and get your tickets there, all proceeds are going to go to the Dylan Quirk Foundation and Focus Ireland. Get your tickets now. Help support those great causes, and Borgosh Energy are proud sponsors of the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. We're back after these.
You're listening
to OTB AM.
3, 2, 1, go. Whether you're a Drive to Survive fan or Grand Prix expert, now you can stay up to date with the world of F1. The F1 Pod on Off the Ball with Chicago Town Pizza, the ultimate podcast for F1 fans. The F1 Pod will keep you on the edge of your seat. For the best insight and analysis, subscribe to the Off the Ball daily podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. The F1 Pod on Off the Ball with Chicago Town Pizza. Formula One? Yeah, we go to town on it.
Now, if you look back at the 2015 version of him, he wouldn't even fill out the jersey. But if you look at him, like obviously in that time, he's put on a few stone of muscle. Like it's a different.
What that man did, Murphy, you're dead right. He came in 15. I think very soon out of minor. He was the stick. Like he was very narrow. There's actually a clip of him where he's doing like a fist pump, and the jersey's hanging off him.
Yeah.
That winter, I don't know what he did over the course of a couple of months, but he just transformed into a unit.
Yeah.
Absolute unit. And by God, he used that strength. The reason I asked you to mark him is because how do you find him physically? I'd never get near him, obviously, in training, unless I'm going out to stop a shot off him, but like wrestling with him or low, because he's every time I see him, he's low to the ground, which means he's lowering his center of gravity. No one can shove him off the ball.
Yeah. This is it.
Nobody.
Like you, you can't. There's no defender that will physically outmuscle Conor Whelan. Like as in, you'll go 50-50 with him. But the thing is if you give him a ball, because he's so big as well, what he does is he shapes the body so well that he's taking that ball low into the midsection and putting the hand down, or controls it. Like he controls it so well, shortens the grip up. So for you to get a flick in them is very hard to do.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Yep, 22 minutes past 9 on OTB AM, and that is Adrian, that is not myself. You didn't just get him on an accent overnight. Delighted to have Shayne Murphy in studio with us. Shayne, you've been on with us before.
Yes,
I'm pretty sure. Are we going with performance coach, sports scientist, fitness coach? What's your
it's just a title. I don't really care. Performance coach is probably more accurate, but it's a title.
So for people unfamiliar with your story, or maybe didn't hear the previous chat, I know you were on with Jaron Owen before. What exactly is it that you do? You've been working with the likes of Manchester City and currently the Scottish national team as well. So what does the job entail?
I ask myself that question every day, really, to be honest, because it's changed so much. I left, it was very, very concrete in my mind what I was doing at Man City. I was a strength and conditioning coach, a sports scientist, and then I left there and I set my own company. So now I find myself as a consultant with City Football Group, which is responsible for the development of Manchester City's loaned players who are not quite good enough for the first team, but too good for the academy. So I'm responsible there for their development, and that's a whole host of a conversation. And then with the Scotland team, it's preparing them for all the games they have in preparation for like European Championships or whatever we've got coming up. And then I think what you've probably noticed a lot what's happening in the industry now is footballers are getting external guys to help them out. So LeBron James did it in the NBA, and some people, and Ronaldo has done it in the Premier League, and so on. That's cascaded down to other individuals. So I find myself as the team behind the team of certain individuals that play in the Premier League and the Scottish Premiership.
What had cropped up recently, I know you were involved with the Scottish setup, Steve Clarke's setup when Scotland played Georgia recently, and the pitch gets a bit waterlogged, and then the rain starts coming down, and I think Scott McTominay standing in the tunnel at one point, looking down the tunnel, and the Georgian players didn't want to come back out. So you probably had to be kicked into gear at that point, where there's a delay, players' muscles are getting tight. How do you cope with a situation like that, where all of a sudden you're landed with something that you weren't really expecting pre-kickoff?
Yeah, exactly. It was such a weird moment, or a cool moment as well. Like, it was quite a challenge, because I think in normally speaking you have just fairly binary what you do. You warm up the team, and then X equals Y, and everything happens kind of like periodically. But in that moment, call up after 6 minutes, never happened before. Players didn't know what was happening. Players were talked about, it's going to be postponed the next day, and they've all got plans to do whatever they need to do. So they're emotional, they're like reacting to it. No one knows what's doing. The kick-off's delayed every 15 minutes, and it's, like you said, you're trying to manage the physical kind of low. You're warming up. I think we warmed up 4 times in that moment, because it was actually an hour 40 minutes after the kickoff, like how the game went on. So it was quite a long delay, and it felt like that in the changing room, because you also had Georgia who were trying to get it seemed like they didn't want to play because they're 1-0 down also, which doesn't help. But it was more about the mentality and keeping the team together, because in that moment what happens a lot of people is you hear this thing called cognitive decline. So they're not 25-year-old professional athletes at that moment, they're 4-year-old kids, you know what I mean? So they're the kind of emotions are really high. So it's just keeping the team focused, keeping them in a plan, I'd say, because we were given, you got 10 minutes to warm up, and the players just wanted to go out and just do anything for 10 minutes. But if you do that, it's a long time to be standing around, you know what I mean, warming up. You need to focus, so it was just kind of making sure it was a process and keeping them together, and then kind of doing that. But a lot of staff helped in that moment, and some of the players are real leaders as well, so they just took control of that. Like you got the skipper Andy Robertson, he's a natural born leader, and he just kind of takes control of that situation as well. So there was a lot of people helping out in that moment, but it's certainly about just sticking to a process and just keeping the emotions intact.
It's funny, we were chatting to the Roscommon senior football boss Davy Burke, who was in studio yesterday, and there was something he said that kind of struck me. It was they had obviously planned for the Connacht Championship, that opening game against Mayo, and really focused on it. Then they win that game, of course, but he's almost, I think he was wondering out loud yesterday, did a focus on that and preparation for a certain date maybe hamper the rest of the season? Do you get the workload right later in the All-Ireland Championship? A player's tired, and it's tough to find that balance, and I guess there's the psychology and all that comes into this as well. But have you found that it can be difficult for teams to kind of find that balance and peak for a certain period and keep peaking at different points?
It's very, because you can't always peak, and football is this, and other sports are like this, and GAA is like this as well. You got to peak every Saturday or every Tuesday, so you got say Olympic cycle, you got to peak at 4 years, so it's a bit more, so how do you, and if you look at another thing is, like, if you look at the team of the week every time in the Premier League, it's never the same team, so people are peaking, there's an undulating individuality to the peaking as well. Not everyone's peaking at the same time, so the idea that a team peaks is probably it's probably just something we talk about, but it's actually not you want your best players peaking at that time. So it's a difficult thing to understand, but the more you understand of players, the more you understand of the individuals, and having a goal and having a focus, I think, is the number one thing, because there's so many things that factor into this idea of peaking. But in a group team like that, it's always the individuals. So you don't just look at the forest, you look at the individual trees and you pick them out and you make sure that they're on the right plan, they have their individual things intact. And I think the psychology and the event will get there if you do that right. I think you get the basics right.
I think there was a question, was it Philly McMahon was asked it recently, someone brought it up about who is fitter, a Gaelic footballer or a soccer player. And I know it's like you probably can't really compare them, and I think Philly's point was they're just different body shapes. They have, like, a Gaelic footballer has to be slightly bigger to take the big hits and the physicality of the game, whereas a soccer player probably, as he said, has bigger calves. Like, you look at the likes of Jack Grealish because of the athleticism and kind of niftiness of soccer. Do you have an answer on that in terms of which is the fittest, or is it just one of those questions you can't actually answer?
I think his first point about you can't compare him is the thing. Like, they're so unique, they're so different, there's so many things. Like, it's a rabbit hole, really. It's to go down, really, if you could try and compare. I think but also the players within it, like, you've got players like Jack Grealish, who's got big calves or whatever, but that's not the whole picture. Like, you look at Mahrez, same team, different side of the pitch, or same side if you want, and there's no comparison really. And the point, I think the ultimate point, he said, you can't compare, and there is no one size that fits all. If you look at football, I'm not going to discuss about GAA because it's not my remit, and I would never pretend to be an expert in that. But football is definitely the one sport where you have, even in positionals, you have such a disparity between profiles. You look at strikers over the course of history, we could just name them out, like Peter Crouch, Michael Owen, Dwight York, Sergio Aguero, we could get Torres, we could keep going, you know what I mean? You could and you list them all in the room and you'd never say they're all strikers. Maybe there is a less of a discrepancy between centre halves and maybe goalkeepers, but even still at that, you look at, you can name them, right? So I think football is that one sport that the profile is less important, you know what I mean? What it does maybe allude to is kind of how they play the game and what profile or what physicality they helps them play the game they need to play. But there's such a difference, and there's no profile, and it's sort of the robustness sort of thing, just I like that. So the robustness of, say, a GAA player is sort of different to how we would consider robustness in an argument of robustness for a footballer, because the robustness of a footballer is like, it's not about muscle mass or size or anything like that. It's like, look at the games they have to play, the amount of games a Premier League footballer like Kevin De Bruyne this year could have played 75 games. Like, that's an incredible amount of games, it's too much, it's way too much. But still, robustness is kind of a funny term. It's very hard to kind of get clear clarity of what robustness means, because does robustness mean how physically strong you look, or muscle mass, or does it mean how many games you can get out in a season, how injury prone are you, that kind of thing. So it's so hard to talk about it because it's you need like a whole podcast on it. It's really grey area, it's such a grey area. But football is certainly one sport that there is such a variety of athletes.
Slightly less scientific question for Shane, but the mention of Jack Grealish has me thinking about the homecoming celebrations. Does being a consultant get you a spot on the bus?
No, not quite. I can't claim any of that, unfortunately. But I'll be over there next week, so I'll see the trophies. I might get a picture with them. But no, I wasn't invited.
You're watching the minute by minute sort of Jack Grealish celebrations, and he turns up somewhere else having a few jars in him. Because I know he addressed it, didn't he, after one of the England games? He said, why am I getting asked about this stuff all the time? I've been playing for like 11 months or 11 and a half months. Give me a break. What are your thoughts when all that is like, it's a natural end of season, letting off a bit of steam, or could you mind yourself a bit?
I think it's individuals. I think there's some players now that, like back in the day, and even I remember when I first started in the Premier League, players would finish the season and get really unfit and just completely unwind. Now we see a kind of different cohort of players, and Tony Strudwick made this argument. He's a kind of a legendary S&C coach. He worked with Man United through the years, but he made this point, maybe they don't switch off enough, so maybe there's an argument that they need to switch off, because most of these players finish the season and sometimes they have to keep working because they may have international duty. We had it with some of our players that played in the Championship, that they wanted to keep them ticking over until they met up with this guy like Lyndon Dykes and Kenny McLean and those kind of players who finished Championship early and they had an international duty, so they had to keep continuing. But you have it now with there's so many summer, off-season, pre-season, pre-season kind of camps, we'll say. So these players are looking after themselves all the time and whatever, and I do think they need to unwind, and it's an individual thing, but now it's so like blown up and talked about, and the memes and all this kind of stuff. He's just letting loose for a little bit, and I was like, he's won the treble. I think do it, and if he delivers next week, doesn't get injured, all that kind of stuff, then who's to say he's wrong.
What advice have you got for the likes of us schleps who are sort of like playing a little bit of whatever it is, like five-a-side, or just totally incomparable? We're more the Jack Grealish letting his hair loose Friday than
don't
not.
Put me in the same bracket as you. Hold on a minute here.
Well, you're probably a good target audience for this, because Shane plays keeps his light under a bushel here, but he's like Monaghan United's top striker. Right. What advice, or any advice for people who are just tuned in, who like a bit of casual sport and would like to keep on top of that stuff?
There's a few things. Like I think the first thing to identify, and this is all age groups and all things, I think you have to identify what makes you a good player. You know what I mean? What makes you a bit better than everyone? Because I think there's this tendency for everyone to kind of get well-rounded. And if you even look at the elite, right, and just take a note of their book, no elite footballer is without their problems of their game. Do you know what I mean? There's always something that doesn't make them a good player. If you could just looked at their characteristics of heading, of tackling, whatever it might be, pick a player, identify some weaknesses in them. They'll always have the weaknesses, but it's the strengths and it's the things they can do that make them the player they are. So I think in an amateur level, whatever your super strength or could your super strength be, I think you just need to hone on that. If you want to elevate yourself a little bit further, I think it's having a USP, having a unique selling point about you that separates you from the rest. Because when you get to sort of amateur level, everyone's kind of the same. Some players are a little bit better, but in the grand scheme of things, there isn't like a superstar. We'd say, okay, there might be a superstar relative to the other players around the pitch, but to break away from that league to get up to the higher leagues or improve your game to another level, you probably need to just separate yourself from the rest, if you know what I mean. And I think you do that by developing, whether you're a good crosser or a good finisher or a good header, just get better at that thing. I think that would be the first thing from a technical point of view thing. But then the physical side of things, it's really interesting. Like people in football, do you remember when COVID happened and everyone was doing individual training and everyone got really fit? Like there was some 5k times gone out there that were beat world records, right? But everyone got really fit, okay? And then they came back to their environment, back playing football, and the only metric that went up was injuries. So they lost this kind of specificity of their training, which is really, really important. So if you're doing conditioning, you're trying to get fitter for your game, you always have to have the element of the game within it at some point. Yes, okay, 5k run and Maz runs and all these kind of things do help to a point, but there's a diminishing gain once you get past a certain fitness. Like if you're a footballer that's a good runner and then you keep running to get because that's your strength and you're going after that, I would say you need to deviate from that. It's kind of a counterintuitive point to my first point about the technical side of things, but on the physical side of things, you have to ensure that your training is somewhat specific to the game. And I think that those two things, if you get those right, I think they would help your game massively.
Yeah, it's a good start. You're taking notes over there.
Let's take mental notes here.
Whatever help you can get. Yeah, you talk about the big lad up front, Shane. That's what.
That's it.
5k COVID time hasn't quite been reached since, but hopefully get back there someday.
Yeah. Are you a flick on man, or are you a finisher, or what? Are you
finisher. Big man up top, stick it up high.
Crouchy over there.
Crouchy, yeah, 100%. But I've got an ex-League of Ireland striker beside me as this smaller guy, so that helps.
Making you look good.
Makes it easy.
It helps. Shayne, thanks a million for coming in again, and we'll catch up with you down the track. Thanks a lot. It is 9:37. OTB AM almost wrapped for today. On Monday's show, Shayne is going to be alongside Johnny Ward. It'll be the Gillette Labs performance rankings. We'll reflect on the weekend's GAA course. Shayne, I don't know what are your plans for the weekend?
I'm nervous. I'm actually, would you believe, as someone said earlier on, Shayne will obviously be at the Monaghan match. I rarely miss a Monaghan match. I booked a trip away to Enniscrone for this weekend. I booked it a long time ago. Shayne. I did not expect this.
Deferred out.
And it's going to be a GAA go job.
Wow.
Yeah. There's no
refunds. Bit disappointed.
I know. I'll be watching it, and listen, semi-final and final I'll be there for.
Anthony Moyles, Keith Higgins will reflect on those games on Monday. We'll have plenty more as well. Ruaidhri O'Connor with Nathan last night to leave you from the show, and have a fantastic Friday.
Alright, Ruaidhri O'Connor of the Irish Independent is in studio. There's lots of interesting rugby news at the moment.
More than there should be for...
It's the quiet time of the year.
It's supposed to be, yeah. It doesn't really happen, certainly not this summer. Maybe just the nature of a World Cup summer, but but the Johnny Sexton news, the 20's going well, and even the Rugby Championship coming up next week. It's a 12-month season now, rugby. It doesn't really take a break.
How many tickets for the IRFU do you get for €138,000?
The 10-year tickets?
Yeah.
They're... I suppose on national radio.
I never tried to tap any of my friends in RTE up for tickets for Ireland matches.
Well, even a World Cup package would have been nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's quite extraordinary. I was watching the PAC committee and rugby just popped up. It was like, can we not get it? Can we not have one scandal go past? But then the Johnny Sexton news arrived, so it put me back on point. But yeah, it's quite something, isn't it?
So Johnny Sexton, the statement has come out this afternoon from the EPRC. It says misconduct complaints against the Leinster rugby player Johnny Sexton and against Leinster rugby arising from the Champions Cup final have been lodged by the EPCR. After thorough fact-finding and careful review of Sexton's behaviour towards match officials after the match, in accordance with regulations, the EPCR disciplinary officer has submitted misconduct complaints so that an independent disciplinary panel can determine whether any misconduct has been committed by Mr. Sexton through his behaviour and Leinster through failing to exercise reasonable control over Mr. Sexton. The complaints have been referred to the chairman of the independent disciplinary panel, who is from England, and is to assistants who are from Australia and Portugal, and it's all going to happen by video conference on July 13th. The EPCR said they'll be making no further comment. This has been speculated upon really since the week after the final. Is it a surprise that it's got this far?
I think the longer it dragged on, the more you felt there was something to it, because the night of, really all the focus was obviously around the game, but also this half-time spat that took place outside the dressing room, which was juicy, and I think we all expected, and EPCR gave us a statement on the night saying they would investigate that spat. There's no mention of it in the statement. That seems to have gone away. That was much ado, a very interesting nothing, but much ado about nothing really. But I remember Dave Kelly, I was filing my match reports, Dave Kelly, my colleague, was sitting beside me in the stadium, and he said, look at Sexton, he's going after the ref. And I mentioned him in my match report, but I didn't think a whole lot more of it because there was so much else going on that night. But it emerged subsequently, and it's been very interesting the way the story's gone on. Firstly, it's 6 weeks since the match. It's an awful long time to keep anyone waiting or in the dark about this. A letter was sent about 3-4 weeks ago to Leinster, indicating that they wanted information from them around this incident from Johnny Sexton. Still it's taken, and I guess they say it's a thorough, what are the words they use? It's a thorough and detailed investigation into this, but it's taken an awful long time. I mean, even the fact that the hearing's in 2 weeks' time means that almost 2 months will have elapsed since the game. So I think it's unfair on Johnny Sexton personally. I think it's unfair on Ireland. I mean, there's a big show happening in a couple of weeks' time. There should be clarity around this. I mean, players get banned within a couple of days of matches in the regular season, and while I accept EPCR staff are allowed to go on holidays and stuff like that, there should be a skeleton of staff there who are able to get this done quicker. But having said that, the fact that they've gone this far is very worrying for Johnny Sexton, I would have thought, because this means that they wouldn't have come with nothing, you would imagine. They clearly feel like he has a case to answer. They've appointed a King's Counsel, a senior counsel, and a Portuguese official to this. They're treating it very, very seriously, as they would always. I'm not saying that's very significant, but it's a big thing for him to have to go through, and it's very close to Ireland's first warm-up game. So it's potentially disruptive. I mean, when City AM broke this story, and again, like City AM wouldn't have a track record for breaking rugby stories. This came out in a very strange way through a kind of a fairly obscure London website that seemed to have video footage and a lot of information from within the corridors of power, which suggests someone has just basically lost patience with Johnny over the years and decided this was enough is enough. But when it came through through them, it seemed to have a lot of weight behind it, and I think we're seeing now that there is a lot of weight behind it.
So we don't have the full details of what the official misconduct complaint is. Remind us what exactly he's meant to have done, because I think most people have seen some footage post-match of him approaching the referee. It didn't look as though he was in his face. It didn't look like it was going to get physical, but are there other things that have happened that
I think it's what he said. I think it's what he said to the referee and the way he said it. I would think. I mean, it says after thorough fact-finding and careful review of Johnny Sexton's behaviour towards match officials after the match. So that's what they're looking at. And I mean, none of us heard what was said. There was some finger pointing. There's a second video of him going up to the officials again as he walked off. We have to remember, of course, that Johnny Sexton wasn't involved in this match.
Well, how important is that part of this?
It's pretty significant.
He's not a coach. He's not a player. That essentially he's a third party. It's Johnny Sexton.
Yeah, he's an interested third party, but he is. He's not
made his way onto the pitch to abuse the referee.
Yeah, he's in a suit with a pair of white runners. He stands out quite the Infantino look, and it stands out quite significantly from the stands even. And he is a world figure. He is, within this context, he is the most recognisable man on the pitch. More recognisable than any of the players that played that day in some ways. So, he is the club captain, so he could argue that he does have a role as part of but he wasn't involved. He wasn't part of the 23. He wasn't part of the coaching group. Even if he was, he really has no right. And we do see it, but we have seen.
Do we see it?
From players involved, yes. We've seen it from Johnny Sexton.
From players involved, but
that's what I mean.
I wasn't surprised to see Sexton on the pitch after the game. It's the Aviva Stadium. He knows his way around it. The game is over.
Yeah, and it would have been players from La Rochelle's probably already on the pitch as well. That's not on. But for him to go and make his case to the referees, certainly, and this suggests there was that he maybe went over the top in the way he did that. I mean, we can't say that for sure just yet. We haven't got a written judgment or anything like that. But certainly the suggestion is that he did. It seems like they feel he stepped over a mark, and that's the case that he has to answer. Why was he on the pitch? Why was he? I think that's fair. It's fair enough that he's on the pitch. Why did he approach referees? What did he say to the referees? Was he aggressive towards them in any way? Certainly, there's no physical contact or anything like that. But there have been a couple of very long bans handed out this year for players who've made comments towards referees in these tournaments. So I don't expect him to get hit by anything like a 10-week or something crazy like that. But even if he misses 1 or 2 warm-up games, he's only got 3 warm-up games, 4 pool games guaranteed left in his rugby career. So anything he's ruled out for is a blow. And I think he was going to, because he hasn't played since the England game on March 18th. I think I would have expected him to play a pretty big role in Ireland's warm-up games. I don't think he was going to be rested, certainly for all of them. I think he would have played in at least 1 or 2 of them, plus that you need to build rhythm into a tournament. So the scope for it to disrupt Ireland is quite significant. Leinster also are being cited for failing to control him, I think the words are.
Would that suggest that for players who aren't in the matchday 23, the onus is on the club to ensure that they behave themselves?
Yeah, failing to exercise reasonable control over Mr. Sexton, who is a 37-year-old father of 3. He's not a child. I mean,
again, the language around it
control, that's behaviour and control. So that he lost control, is that the suggestion? I mean, again, it's maybe a bit of semantics, but this is all we have to go on right now.
Look,
but
we need to be careful that we're not hypocritical when how many conversations do we have about respect for referees throughout all sports, and just because Johnny's pissed off at the end of a massive game with some decisions that didn't go in their favour doesn't make it right.
And the players who were on the pitch who had medals at stake didn't do it, so there's a case there to be answered, and his behaviour does need to be reflected upon, and just because he's the Ireland captain and the Leinster captain and a legend of the sport shouldn't protect him from that. I mean, I would hate to see him banned for anything that would impact on his World Cup. I don't think he deserves that in any way, but and O'Gara has said that he doesn't want this pursued, and he was on the other side of it, but I guess he wasn't the one getting a mouthful from Sexton. So look, we'll find out more in 2 weeks' time, but it's really significant.
I'm sure Leinster will have the finest lawyers in the country on this one, and there'll be no shortage of people putting their hands up to protect Johnny Sexton. Even the timeline around this, is there a referee's report like in soccer, that goes in straight after the match?
So, yeah.
So how does...
Certainly my impression at the time, and there would have been a lot of reports, some of my name in it saying that he would escape sanction, but my impression at the time was that Jakob Piper wasn't really keen to pursue this. Like, he's going to come across Sexton again at the World Cup at some stage. And that's where my antennae is up a little bit about, the first video of Sexton's behaviour towards the ref came out through a South African Sunday News, an Afrikaan Sunday newspaper in South Africa, which often is first with the news from the SARU. Then it's come through this obscure enough London website. Certainly in rugby terms, I mean, it may be massive, but I hadn't come across it until these stories. So it was being leaked from somewhere, possibly within England, I don't know. Has there been, within officialdom, a bit of lost patience with Johnny Sexton? Because, he does have a record.
Wouldn't be a surprise.
Wouldn't be a surprise. Is it in the interests of some of Ireland's rivals to kind of undermine them in the build-up? That wouldn't be a surprise. That pressure will be applied in some way. Look, these things do happen behind the scenes, but at the same time, we can't shy away from the fact that Sexton did go up to the match officials. He's filmed doing it twice. I saw it with my own eyes at the end of the game when he had no hand actor part in the match itself. He obviously was emotionally invested in a huge way, and I think, look, they wouldn't have sent this release out. I think a lot of people talked about APCR having no teeth at the end of after the Ulster debacle and the game taking place in the Aviva because of the frozen pitch up in Ravenhill. The investigation was a bit of a whitewash after that. So I wonder, have they just decided they don't want to be accused of that again, or whether they're under pressure? There's a lot going on behind the scenes.
But also the way this is being handled, that, if we're talking about Johnny Sexton getting a 4-week ban or a 6-week ban or anything that impacts his World Cup preparations, that 4-week, 6-week ban is irrelevant if this process happens quickly.
It would be a match ban rather than a week ban. So it's definitely, even if it happened 2 weeks afterwards, Ireland.
The delay in time doesn't make any difference to his suspension.
I wouldn't have thought so, but because it would, everyone would have seen through that. I mean, we have seen teams registering players for games that they would never have played in to get them out of match bans, and maybe Leinster will have a hastily arranged friendly against Connacht in the week before the World Cup opener just to get them off, and they might try that. But that's well down the line. But I do think any ban will rule him out of our game. I don't think it's going to be 3 weeks and it stops before Ireland's first World game or out like that. I think it's gone this far, and it's quite it's a serious, the wording of the statement suggests that he's got a significant case to answer.
I couldn't believe when I saw that the Irish squad were already in camp ahead of the World Cup.
Yeah, they got 2 weeks off.
They got about 4 weddings in and then straight back in. Is Sexton in camp at the moment?
Yeah, no, he is. They're all in camp. They're all training. I believe he's training fully, or certainly was when he first came in. I think what they're doing at the moment is largely, I am watching the odd RFU video just to see what's going on and see if just try and spot if there's anyone who shouldn't be there in there. But there's it looks like they're mostly doing S&C work on kind of normal pre-season stuff. I think what they do is they got 2 weeks off to go through a block. They take another time. They rather than give them 4 or 5 weeks off at once, they try and intersperse the weeks off during their thing to give them a rest during it. So I think they found that's the better way of doing it. But it does, I mean, the provinces are back as well, which just seems unseemly considering they're not playing any games.
Doesn't start till when? October?
Late October, mid-October. So, but they got to keep in condition and they got to be ready for that World Cup.
Munster going to play Crusaders?
Yeah.
At first glance is incredibly exciting, and then you realise it's the day after Ireland play France in the Six Nations.
Yeah, and it's, like all of these Munster friendlies, that they have a really good record of going out and getting good games and they may play this in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and it wouldn't surprise me if they got a very good crowd to it, because there's such a difference to it. Crusaders are in pre-season, and Munster, and they're playing Bristol Bears as well, and Munster have no game that weekend, so it's a good money spinner for them. I think it will be an exciting fixture. I mean, Munster will still have a tranche of players, who won't go to Ireland camp. Some will be released that week and might be allowed to play because it's a good game for them to play in. They beat South Africa with a similar enough team. This
kickstarted the entire season, really.
Absolutely, yeah. They beat the Maori. They nearly beat New Zealand with a team that was missing their international. So the fans won't be put off by the fact that their Ireland stars won't be there. Look, and they're billing it as the Clash of the Champions, which is it's good marketing, and it's bound to grind some gears up in Leinster.
Leinster can't do that, can they?
Well, it's not. I mean, Munster has stolen the march on everyone else by getting this fixture. I think. I mean, Rob Penny is taking over as Crusaders coach. Scott Robertson's moving to the All Blacks, so there's obviously a personal connection there. But I can't remember if the Crusaders are still sponsored by Adidas. I think they might be. I stand to be corrected on that. But there's a couple of maybe running connections between the two organisations. But it's a great fixture. year, and I think it will put bums on seats and bring revenue in, and it all goes towards that playing budget, and it's a smart bit of business.
So the Under-20 World Cup is on at the moment in South Africa. Proper old school rugby. Jesus Christ, the pitch was the worst pitch I've seen in years.
Yeah, well, I mean, they tend to play these games back to back on the same pitch, which is fine if you're playing in the Northern Hemisphere summer, or even in certain parts of South Africa. If you're up in the High Veld, you'd probably be okay. But Parle in the Western Cape has been battered. I got an email from a reader about a week ago saying it hasn't stopped raining here since the URC final. It's just been relentless. There's been flooding, and the pitch is a bog. And they're playing, and they haven't changed tack. And it's been really unfair on the players, I think, that they haven't changed tacks, because Ireland played there this morning, but South Africa play Italy. They're playing now, I think, as we speak, and that's the third game on that pitch today. It's crazy. And
it was barely playable after Ireland beat Australia this morning.
Yeah, it was barely playable when they started. Because the 3 games took place there 5 days ago. We saw the best stadium in that area is the Cape Town Stadium. The pitch was atrocious for the URC final. So it's a problem. But it forced the team to find a way to beat Australia, and they did. And maybe it helped.
I'm burying the lead by talking about the pitch first. So Ireland beat Australia by 30 points to 10. This is after the draw against England at the weekend. They basically had to win this to have any chance of progressing.
Yeah, and bonus point, really, the draw wasn't actually a bad result if they beat Australia, but that was always the caveat. It reduced their wiggle room, but the fact that England and Ireland picked up 3 points each means that if they win their other 2 games, they're both going to go through to the semi-final. 4 teams qualify, the top 3, the pool winners, and then the best runner-up, and the 3 points you get for a draw actually gives you a really good chance of being a best runner-up, because all of the best runners-up, all of the runners-up will have lost 1 game.
Right.
So that's so by Dermot Mangan scoring a try in the last minute off a line-out maul, scrum penalty line-out maul, the way Ireland scored 3 of their tries, it was it was a tap penalty. Sorry, they tapped that one. They'd been repelled at the maul, but by Dermot Mangan scoring that try, it pretty much gives them 1 foot in the semi-final, as long as they beat Fiji next Tuesday. Very good, strong performance. It's a really big Irish team. It's much bigger than previous teams Ireland have had. Paddy McCarthy, the Leinster, he switched from tight head to loose head. Joe McCarthy's younger brother. His brother, excellent in the front row, some unbelievable carrying. Brian Gleeson in the back row was absolutely sensational. The Munster back row.
Well, the Irish pack killed them.
They absolutely killed them. Yeah, they turned the screw. Australia lost their tight head prop to injury 36 minutes into the first half and never really recovered. He's a bit of a monster, and they just lost all their strength in the scrum. Maul, close in contact. They went old school. They went biblical, and it really worked for them. And they've demonstrated a different way to win, which is a really good characteristic. And I think this is a really talented group of players who, like New Zealand got hammered by France today. I know we can draw correlations. Ireland beat France in 6 Nations. France have the latest of the Tuilagi clan playing in their second row. He's 18 years old and 145 kilos. He's an absolute, he was one man in the match. He was unbelievable. I think it's going to be a Northern Hemisphere winner to this tournament. Maybe South Africa will get into the mix, but like New Zealand aren't that strong. Australia looked flashy at times, but weren't that strong either. Like Ireland have a chance to win this. To cut my long point short, as the Grand Slam winners, they look really well primed. If injury, and Ruan Quinn went off with an injury today, doesn't get the better of them.
Sam Prendergast was a real focal point of attention going into this, because I think some people still feel maybe there's a couple of injuries here and there, and maybe he gets parachuted in. Who knows? It's been a bit of a roller coaster for him over the first couple of matches.
It's difficult. I mean, the conditions are tricky for any out half, and there have been undoubted touches of class. I thought there was some moments in that first half where he just rose above it and he was able to play ball. There's been a couple of skewed kicks, there's been a couple of poor conversions, but his line kicking for those line outs was really, really good. Whenever Ireland won a penalty, he made the most out of it. I think when you come out at the end of it, the ledger's going to be very positive for him. Like, he's a class player, and maybe the expectation and the pressure that's come after his Leinster appearances and being touted as a potential World Cup squad member has affected him a little bit. And it's been a long season. He played in this tournament last year, or the version that they had at this tournament last year, so he's played a lot of rugby.
And in a way, that's what this tournament is for. It's like actually having even more pressure on him is only going to work for the long run.
He's trying to play attacking slick rugby on an absolute bog of a pitch, and he's, by and large, he's getting the most out of his talent on it. Like, there have been moments, but it's not easy out there, and he's playing against good players. It's I think I'm generally impressed by him every time I see him. Even when he makes the mistakes, it doesn't seem to faze him. He's, you know, like, he reminds me of Crowley like that he just gets up and makes the next play, and his mindset seems to be very, very good. And look, it's hard kicking on a pitch like that. It's not going to be easy. You know, they've one more game on that pitch. I think that the knockouts will be up in Stellenbosch, which you'd hope won't be. I mean, it's in the same area, it's had the same weather. It'll be affected, but it won't be maybe as bad as Parral has been. But it's character building. It's doing them no harm. And like ultimately, winning a World Cup would be amazing for these players. But what Irish Rugby needs from this team is to get as many of them through, and some of them look ready to go next season.
And the sevens ticking along nicely as well, men's and women's team qualified for the Olympics.
Yeah, for the first time Ireland will have two men. I mean, obviously sevens hasn't been in that long, but you know, when sevens first got into the Olympics, Ireland didn't really have a programme. They built it from the ground up. David Nussfora's pet project, and it's come to fruition, and they deserve to be there. And I thought what was most notable in it was last time they really didn't show up in Tokyo. They weren't able to land the blow. They kind of their medal was when they qualified, and they kind of left it all out there, and they weren't able to tailor their conditioning because they left it really late. They qualified in, I think, June, and the Olympics was in August, and it was really hard for them to back it up. Whereas now they've qualified a year and a bit out, so they can relax, celebrate, go on holidays, come back next season and build everything towards Paris.
Does it get to the stage ever with the Olympics where a year out you start looking at players who aren't involved in the seven setup who could add something to it?
Well, like you could look at someone like Jordan Armour, for example, who's not getting into the senior setup and is not getting his game regularly for Leinster, and mate, like there's talk because they're hosts that France will redeploy Antoine Dupont for next season, which would be remarkable. But like, you know, he is that maybe that's what the sevens would need. So I'm trying to think of anyone in the senior setup.
That.
Oh, absolutely are. And like, I think it would be, you wouldn't want any of the kind of really established guys to be turfed out for that. But we've seen this week with the Women's World Cup squad, there's no room for loyalty in elite sport. If someone can do a job for you and you can get him in who's good enough, then you got to go for that player. I remember when it first came out, people were talking about would they be able to get O'Driscoll playing sevens, when when sevens became a focus for the RFU. I mean, like someone like Gary Ringrose, I mean, it's not going to happen with someone who's really like a centrally contracted established player, I don't think, because you'd have to take them out of the 15s programme for a season, and Ireland remains, on the men's side at least, a 15s country. With 15s is where the money is generated, and the Six Nations, all that stuff. But certainly, like, I'm sure players' heads would be turned and would fancy, could Joey Carberry, fancy a run at the sevens? Like, could that be the thing?
With a little squad here ourselves now.
Absolutely. Well, I'm just
very unfair on the players who've literally just qualified, but
absolutely. But even
sprinkling a stardust might be.
One thing James Topping has done is that he's been quite ruthless. The coach, former international, has been quite ruthless in terms of his selection, and he has, some players have had time out and had to come back because they've been challenged, and that's ultimately come through in this. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be players putting their hands up. It's pretty, like, getting to Paris and potentially winning an Olympic medal is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and this team are quite capable. Like, they've got some of the best sevens players in the world: Terry Kennedy, Jordan Conroy, experienced players like Harry McNulty, Billy Dardis. They have a lot of what of the ingredients to get at least onto the podium.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. OTB AM.